As these words were spoken, Jian Wushuang quickly retreated. The intensity of that killing intent was too overwhelming. He instinctively stepped back, but the crisis had already descended in the last moment. A spout of blood erupted, blood gushing like a fountain. Jian Wushuang fell heavily to the ground and couldn't get up. Even though the power wrapped around the attack seemed small, with just one glance, he was directly gravely injured. But this was exactly what he wanted. If Xia Meng didn't scold or beat him, he might have been dragged out and slaughtered. The face of a strong individual is crucial. After killing the juniors of others, how could one expect a civilized conversation? This is just a small punishment for your crimes, Xia Meng said, sipping tea. Killing Jian Wushuang was a considerable trouble for him, but he couldn't let it go easily either. He disguised himself and infiltrated the internal affairs of the great Xia imperial family. At the very least, he needed to find out what Jian Wushuang was up to. However, he didn't reveal Jian Wushuang's identity to anyone. Only he knew. But the powerhouses under him weren't all in the hands of the great Xia emperor. Now, someone had already been investigating Xia Meng Guanyu's recent activities in the great Xia imperial city. The air gradually thickened. A figure in black, wearing a mask, appeared behind Xia Meng. Then he took out a jade slip and once again disappeared into the air. Glancing at the jade slip, Xia Meng paid no attention to the fallen Jian Wushuang, muttering to himself, "You must be recruiting private soldiers for nearly 100 years, expanding your military strength, and pledging a considerable amount of godstones in various major banks under the name of the Xia Meng family. Your actions don't resemble that of an inheritor." Although the inheritors were mysterious in the kingdom of Great Xia, there were already several of them. And they all had good relations with the royal family. So, Jian Wushuang's identity wasn't as frightening to him. Even though he saw that figure make a move that day, he could discern from the subsequent treatment of Hu Qing and the attitude of Wuliang that there was more to it. There was also the distinction between nobility and lowliness among the inheritors. Just now, he had sent someone to visit Hu Qing, and later he would have Hu Qing come and see if he recognized this impostor. If Jian Wushuang's status and position were high, then he would let Hu Qing take him away, considering it as giving face to Hu Qing. If the status was average and he wasn't very familiar with Hu Qing, it wouldn't be so simple. Jian Wushuang's strength and potential were both astonishing. He would either give him face and don't offend him, or eliminate him as a potential threat. Keeping him around would also be a trouble. After a while, Jian Wushuang finally managed to get up. The blow just now didn't seriously injure him. The reason he got up so late was that people had arrived, and he didn't need to pretend anymore. Hee. No need to pretend. Let's lay our cards on the table. Jian Wushuang touched the blood at the corner of his mouth. Xia Meng showed a puzzled expression. In the great Xia imperial city, in the eastern city, in an inconspicuous and quiet courtyard, Hu Qing had just seen off several emperor visitors who came to discuss matters, and there was a strong smile on his face. Virtuous, a black-robed monk. Just as she was about to turn around, a figure appeared behind her. It was a shadowy expert from Xia Meng's ancestors. "Lord Hu Qing, sorry to trouble you." The shadow revealed his true appearance, but from top to bottom, whether it was the aura or the face, not a hint was revealed. Hu Qing was somewhat surprised but not flustered. Although the other party was at Tier 5, he could maintain calmness. "Senior, one don't know what business you have with me." The shadow took out a portrait, and on top of it was the appearance of Jian Wushuang. Then he whispered, "I'll wonder it you recognize this inheritor named Jian Wushuang." Upon seeing this painting, Hu Qing's expression trembled. Jian Wushuang. In the past, during his time in the Tongtian Buddhist realm, he was close to several masters, with his mission to traverse to the Great Sea region. Now, with the masters fallen and his mission personally shattered by Wuliang Buddha, fortunately, he has recovered the ultimate Dao he once possessed, the Zen mechanism. The black robe represents his great Dao. The monk's head represents the past, the future and the past. He lives in the present. The two merge. All of this is because of the appearance of Jian Wushuang. It is also because of Jian Wushuang's philosophy. 1,000 years ago, the news of Jian Wushuang's fall, he never believed it. Now, hearing news of Jian Wushuang again, no one is happier than him. Know him. Jian Wushuang once led him to break through the army of corpses, and it was also Jian Wushuang who let him achieve enlightenment when he was on the verge of falling. In the Qixin temple now, gradually drifting away from the people of the Tongtian Buddha realm, if one were to say who has the best relationship now, it is probably only Jian Wushuang. The grace of saving a life has never been forgotten. Xianxia, the young girl, stood aside. Seeing Master Hu Qing's expression, she was also somewhat moved. He had heard the master talk about Jian Wushuang. For Hu Qing, Jian Wushuang was both a teacher and a friend. Without Jian Wushuang, he would have fallen long ago. Without Jian Wushuang, he wouldn't have achieved the Tao. Perhaps he would have continued to reincarnate. The two entered the Qixin temple together and fought side by side. Friendship in life and death. Senior, where did you get this painting? The figure of Jian Wushuang in the painting is exactly how he appeared in the Xiamang courtyard. Hu Qing was somewhat moved and hurriedly asked. The shadowy expert sensed Hu Qing's excitement and had an answer in mind. If Hu Qing had shown average interest, he probably wouldn't have brought up the matter again. But with Hu Qing's reaction, he had to take Hu Qing there. The shadowy figure clasped his fists and said, "Your Highness, follow me. He is within the imperial city." All right. In a flash, the two figures disappeared, leaving Xianxia alone in the courtyard. When they reappeared, the spatial shift had taken them to another location within the Great Xia imperial city. The Xia Mang clan's ancestral temple existed in a separate space from the imperial city. This place belonged to a movable celestial mansion. Swish, swish. Upon arriving at the celestial mansion, the shadowy figure's expression suddenly changed. But before he could speak, he calmed down. Even though Hu Qing was powerful, he couldn't capture the every move of a Tier 5 emperor. Where is he? Hu Qing scanned the surroundings, realizing that the scenery in the portrait was the same as this place. Clearly, it had just been transmitted. However, there was no trace of Jian Wushuang here. Only Xiamang Patriarch sat there sipping tea. Killed him. I brought you here just to inform you. Xiamang Patriarch's demeanor changed, his gaze ice-cold, and his aura more ominous than before. Killed? Hu Qing's face changed, and then he became furious for the first time, exclaiming, "You dare to kill an inheritor? Humph, why wouldn't I dare? He was just a Tao lord and he killed my descendants, infiltrated the imperial city, and stole treasures. He deserved to die." Xiamang Patriarch gritted his teeth as he uttered the last three words. Hu Qing's aura suddenly surged, almost ready to attack. This surprised Xiamang, who stood up directly, with controlled anger. "If the conversation is not agreeable, you may leave. Oh, by the way, take his corpse with you. Left him intact. It's a courtesy to you." After saying this, Xiamang Patriarch left the thatched house. On the ground, Jian Wushuang's lifeless body appeared out of nowhere, devoid of any vitality, with his divine body disintegrating and his origin source depleted. It was eerily similar to what happened in the great desolate wilderness. Hu Qing's eyes turned red, hands clasped together, silently uttering, "Virtuous! Buzz!" At this moment, his Tao once again took a step forward, and a purple halo radiated from his brow. The shadowy figure beside him changed his expression because, at a certain moment, Hu Qing's aura had surpassed his own. After a long time, Hu Qing finally calmed down. He collected Jian Wushuang's body, turned his head, and glanced at the wooden house. Xiamang had grievances and he had grievances too. Jian Wushuang's debt had been settled, but his own had not. After forming an alliance within 10,000 years, he would come to avenge this great enmity. After the shadow and Hu Qing left, Xiamang emerged again, with Jian Wushuang still behind him. This person's eyes hold hatred. He actually advanced a step, with astonishing potential. Xiamang commented casually. Jian Wushuang stepped forward, and Bai Junwang also revealed his phantom. If it weren't for the senior's rescue this time, Xiamang might not have let me go so easily. Whoosh! Xia Meng transformed, returning to the original appearance. If I didn't save you, Xia Meng would have spared you anyway. It's just that this opportunity is rare. Gaining an ancient country for nothing, the shapeshifter turned out to be a woman, with exceptional beauty and allure. In her deep red eyes, endless slaughter was revealed. Bloody. Even Jian Wushuang couldn't help but be moved by what he saw. Elle won't stay here. I've already investigated the location. Someone will take over behind me. Little guy, you've done me a huge favor this time. I really can't repay you. How about coming with me? Senior Zhu Qing has already said it. I haven't repaid your great kindness. How can I trouble the senior again? Jian Wushuang expressed his gratitude with a bow. This seemingly beautiful woman was the true demon lord of Tiannan. She was the one who created the Chaos Realm. In the Chaos Realm, she was the absolute ruler, the queen of the Scorpion clan. Even ordinary emperors would be poisoned to death with just one glance. For someone like her, it was better not to get involved. In terms of appearance, he found himself somewhat moved. Her cold and noble beauty was not to be offended, and between the frowns and smiles, it was truly captivating. Jian Wushuang sensed that this person must have some connection with the divine spirits. Turning his head, he glanced at Bai Junwang, who was smiling warmly. Zhu Qing, stop teasing this little guy. We have matters entrusted to us by the divine spirit. We'll visit your divine realm when we have the chance, Bai Junwang said, helping Jian Wushuang out of the predicament. He knew that Jian Wushuang went to the Mo Luo for the matter of the beast god weapons. Zhu Qing cast a glance at Bai Junwang and said with a hint of grievance, I'm afraid that when you go, your strength will have returned to its peak. Don't bully a little girl at that time. After speaking, she revealed a faint smile. Then her body turned into crimson mist, disappearing into the heavens and earth. After everyone left, Jian Wushuang let out a sigh of relief. Previously, in the eyes of others, he hadn't truly fallen. Now he had completely fallen. When Hu Qing left with his body just now, it was actually a clone, but others couldn't tell whether it was real or not. Perhaps only Jinling in the Qishan temple could detect something amiss. He wasn't too confident that people like Jinling would care about this. If they truly cared, he wouldn't have been plundered by Junwang back then. Qishan temple. Within the Sea of Origin source, a streak of blood shadow appeared. Jian Wushuang, whom Jian Qing had just seen, unexpectedly showed up here. However, her appearance had undergone some changes. Lord Jinling. The speaker had transformed into the Lord of Vermilion Phoenix Hall, Zhu Yi. Jinling showed no change whatsoever and casually said, Take a seat. Why did your avatar come to me when it's supposed to be in the Earth realm? Jinling was somewhat puzzled. A millennium ago, due to the matter of Jian Wushuang, he had made adjustments to the four great secret realms. He was the controller of the Qishan temple, with the power of life and death in his hands. Otherwise, the heirs wouldn't have had it so easy these years. Although there were real battles, they were also arranged on Grave God Mountain. As long as the inheritor's identity was exposed, generally, no one dared to provoke them. This was also the brilliance of Wuxia back then. Countless people who heard about the inheritor would break into a cold sweat. Apart from the overt intimidation, the most crucial part was secretly dealing with many rebellious traitors. Like Zhu Qing, who was originally the master of the chaotic domain, was secretly extinguished by Jinling. Then, one by one, he perfectly took charge of Zhu Yi's avatar and controlled the leader position in Tiannan's Kuei organization. Back then, the divine spirit threw a tantrum, not because he didn't go to deal with the other party but because there was simply no need. But if the inheritor was involved, Jinling wouldn't be so easy to talk to. He would directly eliminate the influence controlled by that divine being from the top. Leaders in various regions secretly changed, and although the surface remained unchanged, as long as it was related to information about the inheritor, it would all be sealed. If it were still the same as before, the heirs would have been wiped out by now. Jinling, aware that Zhu Yi wouldn't come for no reason, asked, Is there trouble in the Earth realm again? This is not the case. Zhu Yi shook her head. The news of Jian Wushuang still being alive was something she wasn't sure if it was a significant matter or not. However, the jade tablet in Jian Wushuang's hands was something she had seen clearly. If Zhenling could give this item to Jian Wushuang, there must be some other intention behind it. Therefore, she dared not conceal anything and immediately came to the sea of origin source. Apart from this, there was also the matter of Jian Wushuang joining the Kuei organization. She was already aware that Jian Wushuang was being threatened by someone, and Zhenling should understand this. Master, you should remember Jian Wushuang from 1,000 years ago. He is still alive, and he has joined Kuei organization, Zhu Yi explained. She recounted everything about Jian Wushuang, including the matter of Bai Junwang. The expression of Zhenling, however, was beyond her expectations. There was no surprise at all. I have known he is still alive long ago. The last time Long Yi went to the Earth Realm, he mentioned it to me. Although Long Yi didn't know Jian Wushuang, he knew about the jade tablet of the Qixin and mentioned it to Zhenling when he returned. At that time, Zhenling had already been informed. As for Jian Wushuang joining Kuei organization, it was unknown. Although Zhenling had unparalleled vision, he had not reached the level of knowing everything. For someone like Jian Wushuang, a person with great destiny, it was impossible to recklessly examine the past and the future. Zhenling spoke lightly. As expected, if he can survive, it must be due to coercion. Everything depends on his own destiny. However, if he wants to return to Grave God Mountain, it will depend on his own abilities. Yes, Zhu Yi replied respectfully and withdrew. The meaning of Zhenling was clear. They could not control Jian Wushuang. It was up to him if he lived and perished. If one had the ability, they could return, be nurtured. If not, they would fall. Returning to Grave God Mountain was no trivial matter. At the very least, one needed the strength of a Tier 5 Emperor. Anyone below Tier 5 would be mere cannon fodder. Even a Tier 6 Emperor didn't have absolute certainty, unless they were an unparalleled expert. As of now, Jian Wushuang's strength was indeed considerable, possessing the battle prowess of an ordinary Tier 4 Emperor. To reach the strength of a Tier 5 Emperor, it would take a considerable amount of time, at least after successfully merging with the Tao. But merging with the Tao was no simple feat, especially the ultimate Tao. Earth Realm, Great Xia. Zhu Qing hadn't walked far when a Tier 6 Emperor, disguised as Xianxia Patriarch, appeared. He seamlessly integrated with the appearance and memories of Xia Mang Patriarch, re-establishing control over the area. The newcomer was no stranger. It was Yang Sanmu, who had a deep connection with Jian Wushuang. Yang Sanmu had now advanced to become a Tier 6 Emperor, possessing terrifying combat strength. Zhu Yi had defeated a Tier 6 Emperor from the chaotic domain, and Yang Sanmu, disguised as the defeated opponent, was sent here. In the small courtyard, Yang Sanmu, now transformed into the appearance of Xia Mang Patriarch, revealed a slight smile. Little guy, your current days won't be easy. In his eyes, Jian Wushuang's growth rate hadn't slowed down, but the environment had changed significantly. When Jian Wushuang disappeared, Yang Sanmu felt guilty for a while. Now, seeing him intact and rapidly growing in strength, he couldn't be happier. It wasn't just Yang Sanmu who was pleased. Jian Wushuang was also delighted. In the royal mansion, Emperor Xia Mang Yunxing sent many treasures for practicing the heavenly demon art to Jian Wushuang. The heavenly demon art required few treasures for the first 4 techniques, but for the 6th arm heavenly demon form, numerous treasures were needed. Back when duist Lu Yang cultivated the 6 arms, he could transform them into 6 suns and moons, possessing immense power, requiring a substantial amount of treasures. Now, the great Xia Emperor sent treasures that allowed cultivation up to the 8-arm heavenly demon form, bringing joy to Jian Wushuang. He had witnessed the demonic giant who, with 8 arms, had strength multiplied by more than 10 times, even though he could only maintain it briefly. Although Jian Wushuang's heavenly demon art had only reached the 8-arm stage, it was close. Haha! Good news keeps coming. You wanted to forge the beast god weapon, right? I found the person for you, and they've agreed almost immediately. Bai Junwang informed Jian Wushuang upon receiving the news. Jian Wushuang couldn't conceal his joy and hastily inquired, "What does the other party require? As long as it's not too unreasonable, I can merge right away. The other party has no specific demands. He would be delighted if you could refine the beast god weapon. This is one of the 9 most brilliant treasures from ancient times. Bai Junwang spoke with excitement. His joy stemmed from Jian Wushuang's success, and the fact that someone still remembered the glory of the beast god weapon. In ancient times, the 9 beast god weapons traversed the endless river of time. The reputation they left behind was so formidable that many people shuddered at the mere mention of those 3 words. Jian Wushuang wasn't as excited, but he felt somewhat uneasy about freely merging with the beast god weapon. The cost wasn't substantial. The emphasis was on the origin source. What about the details of the other party? It was normal for Jian Wushuang to be somewhat uneasy. He didn't even trust that divine spirit, let alone these elders from the Kuei organization. What if they ran off with his beast god weapon? Candle dragon feather wings, candle dragon eye, candle dragon armor. These scattered components were individually worthless, but when combined, they possessed the power of an eternal treasure. The defense of the candle dragon armor alone could rival that of an eternal treasure. If combined with the origin source, its value surpassed that of an ordinary eternal treasure. Currently, the beast god weapon was considered discarded parts. However, once fused into a whole and a new beast god origin source was refined, it would be a different story. At that point, it would be an incomplete beast god weapon, or rather, half of a beast god weapon. The remaining candle dragon heart, candle dragon claw, candle dragon arm, and most importantly, the candle dragon shell, gathering all of these was not an easy task. However, in the current 4 great secret realms, there were at least a few of these components. He could be aware of it, and others could discover it too. Just like Dao Lord Citian, who had already found the existence of the beast god weapon and was probably continuously searching for the remaining components. Bai Junwang's expression changed, his voice becoming more serious as he spoke. This person is from the chaotic domain, a trusted subordinate of Zhu Qing. There shouldn't be any problems. Zhu Qing and I are from the same era. She has been allied with the divine spirit even longer than I have. There shouldn't be any issues with her subordinate. Can you guarantee that? Jian Wushuang didn't voice this question. He was conflicted. Initially, he had Bai Junwang contact the other party, thinking that if he demanded a high price, he might not suspect. However, asking for nothing in return, merely scratching an itch, seemed somewhat unlikely. A Tier 6 emperor wasn't a fool. After a moment of silence, Jian Wushuang hesitated. How about this? Let's personally pay a visit first, and then we can discuss. He didn't dare to gamble. The beast god weapon was a great treasure that would greatly increase his strength in the future. Even if someone offered an eternal treasure in exchange for his beast god weapon, he wouldn't agree. Bai Junwang understood Jian Wushuang's concerns and nodded. He began contacting the Tier 6 emperor disguised as Xiamang Patriarch. If possible, Jian Wushuang didn't want to procrastinate. The scent of war grew thicker. The war between Great Xia and the Mo Luo would soon erupt. However, before that, something significant happened within the imperial city. Hu Qing, the inheritor, left Great Xia in anger and headed towards the borders. Originally, he had planned to march with the army, but some unpleasant incidents occurred between him and the royal family, so he left directly with his disciple. However, the girl named Xianxia, who was once a commoner 100 years ago, had now attained Dao. If not for Hu Qing's radiant light, it would have been surprising long ago. In just 100 years, she had become an immortal. No one knew the reason. The first year of the new era, autumn. On this day, with the continuous drizzle of autumn rain, the air carried a chill, arriving much earlier than usual. There were rumors that in the harsh winter of the 12th month, there would be a military campaign against the Mo Luo. Although Xiamang Guanyu held a high status, it was unclear if it was genuine or a facade. Since losing the esteemed guest Hu Qing, the crown prince's position plummeted, and for a while, a sense of closure prevailed. During this period, the second prince, following the lead of the Grand Marshal of Great Xia, Xiamang Yunzhan, practiced military formations and managed significant responsibilities. Hu Qing had left, but Wuliang remained. Jian Wushuang wasn't particularly surprised. The other party had been busy with the preparations for war. It was likely a mission on hand. Otherwise, it would be improbable to stay in Great Xia for so long. There weren't many opportunities for cultivation here. One would need to go to chaotic territories for that kind of growth. Stepping through the rain, Jian Wushuang re-entered the imperial palace. This time, the old eunuch personally led him into the cave in the Grand Temple of Great Xia. However, the eunuch did not follow inside. He waited outside the teleportation array. Once again inside the cave, Jian Wushuang shed the disguises of the past and casually flew to the courtyard outside. The pseudo-emperor, who disguised himself as the Xiamang Patriarch, a Tier 6 emperor, was already waiting for him on an outside stone table. Unlike the outside world, the season here remained unchanged, always the same. Younger one Jian Wushuang pays respects to the senior. Jian Wushuang showed considerable respect. Despite having Bai Junwang, the transcendent elder, backing him internally, he dared not be disrespectful. The old man with goat horns sitting by the stone table, with a glint in his eyes, casually spoke. No need for excessive courtesy, just have a seat. Jian Wushuang was also sensible. He walked to the stone table, did not sit down, but stood a foot away from it. Bai Junwang within his body transformed, taking on a solid form, and appeared in the seat. Imperial dog. Bai Junwang revealed a faint smile. In the past, calling someone a dog was to give face to Zhu Qing. But now he came to seek help, so he naturally had to address with respect. Senior Bai, no need to say more if it's too much. If you're not at ease, you can leave. The old man with goat horns hadn't completely integrated into this new identity, and his words were somewhat hasty in the beginning, only realizing it later. Now, he could only show a slightly displeased expression. He felt speechless. Things had turned out this way, turning good intentions into a mess. Bai Junwang was a person of great stature, and negotiations were naturally not empty words. Hearing this, he spoke in a gentle tone. Don't be angry. We come here with sincerity. When seeking help, how can we not offer compensation? As the words fell, Jian Wushuang respectfully took out a small box. Inside, there was only a mustard seed. Please. Bai Junwang made a gesture of invitation, giving plenty of face. The old man with goat horns picked up the mustard seed, sensing it slightly, and almost burst out laughing. 100 billion godstones. Originally, he had no concept of godstones. Now, after obtaining the memories of the great Xia Patriarch, he had an understanding. For a Tier 5 emperor, 100 billion was a decent fortune. But for a Tier 6 emperor, it was just some trash. Not even a handy eternal treasure could be bought with it. Jian Wushuang noticed the disdain in the other's eyes and quickly spoke. Senior, rest assured. This is just a token of goodwill. Feel free to ask for anything. One will go through fire and water for what is possible. Disguised as the dog emperor and then as the old horned man of Great Xia's patriarch, he felt a bit dizzy. Without further ado, he handed the mustard seed to Jian Wushuang and then took out a piece of black shining godstone. Don't waste words. Swear the cosmic oath directly, so you can be at ease, right? Both Jian Wushuang and Bai Junwang were a bit stunned. So direct, so straightforward. Oh, by the way, this oath, one and Senior Bai will take it. You don't qualify yet? The old horned man said, harboring resentment towards Bai Junwang. Bai Junwang didn't mind. The oath was quickly sworn. All were delighted. The old horned man tentatively offered help to the origin source, but Jian Wushuang refused, and there was no insistence. Jian Wushuang had been exploring the refinement of the origin source for a long time and had some grasp of it. The key was the blood crystal of the gold beast god. Gold represented space, and the candle dragon was a space beast god. The two were connected. There were many gold beast gods, and it didn't necessarily have to be the blood crystal of the candle dragon, as long as the origin source among them was the same. He was confident in this. Crucially, his power of all things corresponded to the entire spatial existence. He had even greater plans. Since his extreme Tao origin source corresponded to the entire spatial existence, could he directly use it, transform it into a spatial origin, and use thought power to create a new beast god origin? All of this had to wait until the fusion of the beast god weapon to be tested. Wait here. I'll use the speed of time, and it will take about an hour. Jian Wushuang hurriedly expressed his gratitude. Merging with the beast god weapon was probably something that couldn't be accomplished in 1,000 years for most, but the other party managed it in just an hour, likely using a speed multiplier of 100,000. Felt like it had been 1,000 years. This hour seemed exceptionally long, and even when his state of mind was at the 5th level, he couldn't achieve tranquility. After the Heart Sword trial struggled to keep up with his advancements, his pursuit of heart power seemed to lack the fervor it once had. Now that he had been in the 5th level for a long time, there was no change in his mental state, even though he had almost fallen back then. It seemed that he had reached the end of this path. Heart power, thought force, devouring, and all things, they were all interconnected. Reflecting on the years mastering the extreme Tao, his strength had skyrocketed, and for a while he lost himself in the process. In the past, his mental state or state of mind was so formidable that it could still dominate enemies, but now he felt somewhat lofty. Jian Wushuang turned around, looking towards the ancestral temple, and a hint of awe appeared in his eyes. It was time to be reverent. Otherwise, an unexpected event could lead to his downfall on the path ahead. Creak. The door of the grass hut opened, and Yang Sanmu walked out, holding a light red sphere in his hand. Glancing at Bai Junwang sitting beside the stone table, he spoke, "Give it a try." Then he tossed it to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang held it with one hand, feeling the powerful aura inside, leaving him astonished. Because Bai Junwang wasn't inside him, but the first trace of aura contained an image. It was the scene of Chihuang City. At that moment, Jian Wushuang fully understood. He looked at Yang Sanmu, and his expression changed, and finally, he respectfully bowed without uttering a word. "All right, let's give it a try first." The old man with sheep horns waved his hand. Jian Wushuang also felt a strong impact. He directly threw the sphere into the air, and his whole body floated up as his aura gradually soared. Crash! The sphere shattered, transforming into a pair of wings. Above the wings, there was a crimson eye, and the wings enveloped the candle dragon armor. He turned into a stream of light, directly integrating with the beast god weapon, becoming a veritable Azura at that moment. Without the origin source, the beast god domain had not yet advanced. Now, the beast god weapon had only strengthened some harmonizing power, but it still elevated this treasure to a higher level. Its previous effects were average, with candle dragon wings comparable to imitated eternal treasures, and the armor comparable to eternal treasures. The candle dragon eye was somewhat special. In the outside world, it could achieve a power increase of 10,000-fold, making it a decent treasure, at least sufficient for a Tier 3 emperor. But in places like the 4 great secret realms, where ancient legacies abounded, the role of the beast god eye was minimal, with an increase only within 10,000-fold. It was even somewhat redundant for use by a Tao Lord. This had significantly diminished its value. Now, after merging together, the faint candle dragon origin source within the candle dragon eye became even scarcer, in desperate need of nourishment. Only by allowing the candle dragon's origin source to recover could the beast god's domain be elevated. At that time, his strength would likely approach the peak of the Tier 4. The path of divine body cultivation he walked was arduous. 100 billion godstones, if used properly, could yield a divine body of 30,000-fold in potency. This level was the norm for most Tier 5 emperors. Tier 4 emperors, on the other hand, could reach around 40,000-fold. Even for Tier 6 emperors following the path of cultivating divine bodies, reaching 50,000-fold was the pinnacle. The ancestral figure from the heavenly demon sect, with 12 arms and a heavenly demon's body, was able to dominate the Tier 6 with a divine body of 50,000-fold. Breaking through the 50,000-fold mark to reach the terrifying level of Bai Junwang was no simple feat. It required cosmic-level secret techniques and numerous suitable treasures. The forging of divine bodies using the 5 elements treasures was merely a foundation. After all, cultivators were not inherently special life forms. Individuals like Jian Wushuang, born as a special life form, didn't even fall into the category of typical special life forms. Since widening his perspective, Jian Wushuang realized how terrifying the inheritance Xian Yi had given him was. The myriad Tao scripture bestowed upon him initially was truly formidable. If the path of divine body strayed, but he wasn't worried. He could always correct course later. However, if he was astray on his Tao path, he would carry that regret for a lifetime. Phew! Exhaling deeply, Jian Wushuang retracted his aura and landed on the ground once again. He expressed gratitude. Senior's techniques are truly remarkable. The external power of the beast god weapon has recovered significantly, and its might surpasses that of ordinary eternal treasures. After exchanging pleasantries once more, Jian Wushuang left with Bai Junwang. Questions arose. He couldn't let Bai Junwang sense any strangeness. Although both individuals owed him great favors, their paths diverged. One was the divine spirit, Shenling. Meanwhile, the other the true spirit, Zhenling. These two forces couldn't be judged on the same scale. The Shenling had been suppressed for countless years, and in his eyes, the Qixin temple was nothing short of demonic. The Zhenling, on the other hand, merely followed the original intention of the Qixin, suppressing those ancient savage beasts. Releasing them would only bring calamity. This was understandable. It was simply impossible to untangle. Jian Wushuang found himself caught in the middle, suspiciously benefiting from both sides. However, he truly didn't care. Now that he bore the identity of a Kuei member, Shenling probably already knew. Since the old man with goat horns could still help him, it meant the issue wasn't significant. He also feared the wrath of the Zhenling, fearing they might slaughter him. But after Dragon E returned last time, nothing happened. This suggested that nobody really cared about his allegiance or whether he posed a threat. Everything flowed naturally. It was quite convenient. With the background of being an inheritor, it was not conducive to self-cultivation. Just like Hu Qing, wherever he went, she was treated as an honored guest. Even in the Earth realm, there was not much reverence for the divine temple or grave god mountain. But it was also unwise to offend unilaterally. The heavenly court was a perfect example. Sneaking into the forest of eternal secrets resulted in the destruction of the Nalan family. The entire Earth realm rallied, unafraid of the divine temple's influence in the realm. However, when a powerful figure from the divine temple emerged, they wiped out the Nalan family. No one dared to speak up for them. That was asking for trouble. The divine temple lacked not top-tier combat power but control over the forces in the Earth realm. Only by understanding this principle did the forces in the Earth realm dare to act this way. After Jian Wushuang returned to the palace with the beast god weapon, he began to prepare for the matter of the beast god origin source. In a quiet secret chamber, Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on a jade bed. The sea of origin source within his body had not completely solidified. A single, ultimate pillar of origin stood tall in the center, with Jian Wushuang standing above it. The beast god weapon floated in front of him, its origin source leaking out. Gently touching a strand of the beast god's origin source, the entire sea of origin source trembled, countless patterns appearing. Although Jian Wushuang couldn't fully understand, he could roughly make sense of it. After all, his spatial origin source had already come a long way. All things and also space. Jian Wushuang frowned. It was difficult and troublesome to extract the origin source from one's own origin source. Later, the external true self split into a clone, embarking on a journey to various major businesses in the imperial city. He purchased numerous origin source treasures of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth, creating a complex assortment. Billions of godstones were spent. Utilizing the power of all things, he sensed the origin source within these treasures and then, using the power of devouring, swallowed and condensed them. Unfortunately, the process was too challenging. Of the billions worth of treasures, 90% was wasted, and only a trace of origin source was reluctantly forged. This trace of origin source was already very close to the origin source of the beast god. Swish! In his hand appeared a blood crystal of the gold beast god. These blood crystals were extremely precious, originally intended for his own integration. But now, in order to quickly enhance his strength, They had to be injected into the beast god weapon. Buzz. The mighty gold origin source was devoured by the tremendous power of devouring. The gold origin source was originally spatial in nature, coupled with the trace of origin source condensed from the power of all things. The two merged slowly. Boom! The sea of origin source trembled once again. It failed. Jian Wushuang frowned, but he didn't lose heart. He had plenty of the power of all things. Although the extraction of the 5 elements origin source was challenging, it could be purchased. Continuing to purchase a large number of treasures, he extracted and fused them. It took 7 attempts before he successfully condensed with the origin source of the beast god. The difficulty in this process was immense. If it weren't for these sources constantly being refined for by Junwang, he wouldn't have succeeded so easily. Buzz. A buzzing sound echoed, and the origin within the beast god weapon grew stronger, requiring some time to adapt. The continuous buzzing made Jian Wushuang's heart palpitate. Too powerful. The origin source was successfully refined, and the trace of origin in the eye of the candle dragon finally began to penetrate the entire beast god weapon. In fact, it also covered the other 2 items. With the addition of the origin source, the inner armor became even more powerful, especially the candle dragon wings. After obtaining the origin source, it was almost like possessing 2 completely different treasures compared to before. Now, the candle dragon wings, with just a spread of its wings, could unleash an aura reminiscent of ancient times. That's the chi feathers! Bai Junwang exclaimed in surprise. He hadn't expected the origin source refined by Jian Wushuang to be so powerful. Even the unique skill chi feathers from the time when the beast god weapon was intact could be displayed. Jian Wushuang retracted the feather wings and looked at Bai Junwang curiously, asking, "Chi feathers? What is that?" Haven't seen it either, but when I was in the River of Time, one once mentioned it to a universe master one followed. One of the 9 beast god weapons, the candle dragon, has a move called chi feathers. When unleashed at full power, the sharp feathers can shatter even the mighty universe masters, and a tier 6 emperor would be as fragile as thin paper. Bai Junwang explained with excitement. Back then, he was only a tier 5 emperor, following a universe master of comparable strength and not very prominent. The 9 divine masters who wielded the beast god weapons were extraordinary, dominating the space-time continuum. Weak universe masters would bow their heads in their presence. Bai Junwang had never seen it himself, only heard about it. Now, witnessing it with his own eyes, although it hadn't reached the level described, it was already impressive to him. If Jian Wushuang could really gather the complete beast god weapon candle dragon, in the future, he might be unmatched in the entire River of Time. He had heard that in the current River of Time where the Qixin Temple was located, universe masters were rare, and there might not even be any. In such a weak space-time, Jian Wushuang could roam freely. Jian Wushuang once again spread his feather wings, his figure rotating, and instantly burst forth. A burst of white aura erupted around him, indeed releasing numerous sharp feathers, each one incredibly sharp, enough to strangle a tier 3 emperor. Indeed powerful. Now that he had just opened up the origin source, in the future, he would need to nurture his own power of all things. As for the beast god blood crystals, integrating them would be too wasteful. When he merged the paths or became an emperor later, these blood crystals would be extremely useful. Unconsciously, 2 months had passed. The clone in the royal mansion had been managing the affairs of the private army. The Luoho formation couldn't afford to be careless. This time, in the attack on the Mo Luo nation, it was for the candle dragon arm that the Mo Luo crown prince possessed. With the opponent's pinnacle tier 4 strength, coupled with his distinguished identity, there might even be tier 5 emperors around him. To kill him would be quite challenging, so he had to be fully prepared. The Luoho battle formation, combined with his mastery of space, could unleash a power equivalent to the pinnacle tier 4, even rivaling the strength of a tier 5 emperor. This was a significant reliance. 9th Prince. His Majesty has decreed that all those going to war must assemble at the Imperial Palace immediately. A sharp voice echoed, and then departed directly. Jian Wushuang withdrew his avatar clone, and his true self walked out from the room. The leader of the guards stood by, ready for orders. These people were absolutely loyal to Xiamang Guanyu, but they were not eager to go to the battlefield. Prepare the chariots, we're going to the imperial palace. For a moment, the entire imperial city was in turmoil. Suddenly, the Mo Luo attacked the fourth city. General Gudong was severely injured and retreated. The fourth city has fallen. The second city's defense forces went out for patrol, and 30,000 were annihilated with no survivors. In just 3 days, 100,000 troops had fallen at the borders. The fourth newly built city was also breached, and General Gudong, one of the empire's 3 great generals, was critically injured and urgently needed to return to the imperial city for recovery. There were no available prominent generals on the front lines. The subordinate generals were not weak in strength, but they lacked considerable skills in commanding battles. Upon arriving at the Qianqing Palace, the important figures surprisingly didn't procrastinate and were even faster than their arrival. In the Grand Hall, the Imperial Emperor, Xiamang Yunxing, presided. The first to arrive was Xiamang Yunzhan, the great Xia's strongest war god. At the top of Tier 5, he possessed strength comparable to a Tier 6. Now that everyone is here, follow us to the northern city military camp. We will immediately break camp and set out for war. As the voice echoed, the atmosphere became incredibly majestic. Everyone rose in respect, and at that moment battle armor was donned. Rumble. Dark clouds covered the sky. This time, the expeditionary force consisted of a staggering 10,000 warriors, all Tier 4 emperors. Just the major clans in the imperial city mobilized 3,000 Tier 4 emperors, forming a grand army of 3,000 battalions. Another 5,000 belonged to the direct lineages of the Great Xia vassal kings. The remaining 2,000 were the true elite of Great Xia, led by Xiamang Yunzhan. The outcome of the war depended on these individuals. The so-called 5 army camps of the vassal kings and the 3,000 battalions formed by the major clans were all ragtag troops destined for doom on the battlefield. Outside the imperial city, standing in the sky, military camps stretched endlessly as far as the eye could see. Buzz! With a wave of Xiamang Yunxing's hand, a colossal city descended from the heavens, spanning billions of miles in length and width, its end indiscernible. The power it emanated above was awe-inspiring, intimidating countless onlookers. This is the pinnacle eternal treasure, the city of suppression. Many Tier 5 emperors recognized this grand city. Xiamang Yunxing looked down at the vast army below and declared with a commanding voice, "The Mo Luo has repeatedly violated our borders. Today, I announce the expedition to vanquish the Mo Luo." As his words fell, the chi of heaven and earth condensed, flowing into the entire city of suppression. Commander Xiamang Yunzhan, receive the seal, Xiamang Guanyu Star declared, handing over the great seal of the city of suppression to Xiamang Yunzhan. He was the ruler of a nation. There was no need for him to personally go to war. The 2 brothers, one in charge of military campaigns, the other responsible for stabilizing the realm, each had their own duties. On the surface, there was a distinction of higher and lower positions, but in private, they addressed each other as equals. "L will not disappoint your Majesty's expectations." Xiamang Yunzhan took the lead in responding. Whether it was the generals above or the vast army below, they all shouted in unison, their voices shaking the heavens and the earth. The united and resolute momentum had already emerged, and Xiamang Yunxing nodded in approval. With the encouragement of the 2 brothers in turn, the atmosphere truly became cohesive. Then came the entry of the army into the city. The 8 city gates opened, welcoming in a myriad of soldiers. In fact, flying directly in would have been faster, but rules were rules. Hastily flying into the city would carry unfavorable implications. The army entered the city in an orderly manner, and Xiamang Yunxing quietly exited. There was a hint of determination in Xiamang Yunzhan's eyes as he gestured for the troops to settle in the city of suppression. This super city was specifically crafted for military campaigns. Apart from the magnificent central hall, the other 4 directions were flat grounds, and now the military camps were fully stationed. Xiamang Yunzhan personally organized the divisions. For this campaign, Xiamang Yunjian was the supreme commander, and everyone obeyed his orders. Defying military orders was a grave crime, and no one dared to challenge it. Even several princes dared not. The originally arrogant second prince, now standing behind Xiamang Yunjian, was extremely restrained. He didn't even dare to call him imperial uncle anymore. Like everyone else, he was addressed as Grand Marshal L. Crown Prince Xiamang Guanjuan served as the commander-in-chief for this campaign, sharing a status similar to Xiamang Yunjian's, but with a stark contrast in power. Commander-in-chief and Grand Marshal. Apart from these two, there were two major generals on the left and right, the two of the three commanders of Great Xia, commanding the main forces of 2,000 regiments. The rest were not distinguished in any particular order. There were a total 60 Tier 5 emperors. 60 generals were appointed, and aside from their respective private armies, some families without Tier 5 emperors to lead were assigned to those who had them. Jian Wushuang, due to his relationship with the Shenyuan family, was assigned to them. Shenyuan Depan's strength was extraordinary. Under his command were 5 Tier 4 emperors from his direct line, and then there were additional 10 Tier 4 emperors from his subordinates and those assigned to him, along with hundreds of thousands of Tier 3 emperors. Although it was officially arranged like this, the 5 army regiments and the 3,000 regiments still had their own leaders. For example, the 3,000 regiments in the capital, where Shenyuan Depan was stationed, had already regarded him as their general. Xiamang Yunjian naturally saw this. The 3,000 regiments were responsible for the eastern city, merely guarding one side of the city wall. After all, they were nobles of the capital, and differences in treatment were normal. The 5 army regiments gathered from all corners of the realm varied significantly in strength. Though they stood atop hills, they lacked the power and background of Shenyuan Depan, and could only be responsible for the 2 southwestern city walls. The remaining northern city wall was guarded by 2 armies from the left and right. Not many powerful individuals were needed for guarding. 2 Tier 5 emperors with a group of people were sufficient, primarily tasked with combat outside the city. Now, the north wall had been designated as the primary exit. This meant telling them that no one should come out on the north city wall. They could pass through here. They knew that this time they were here to weaken the influence of various families, to take a beating. However, they really wanted to win. If they won the campaign, they would be the first to carve up the conquered territory. All right, that's it. Everyone get into position now, and let's set out. The crowd responded in unison and dispersed. Jian Wushuang followed Shenyuan Depan out of the main hall and arrived at the camp assigned to them. Here, millions of cultivators had gathered. Spread the word. All emperors come to my tent for a discussion. Shenyuan Depan's face was stern. When he turned to look at Jian Wushuang, a faint smile appeared. This war is a great opportunity for you to earn outstanding merits. Keep this token. For every enemy you don't kill, you'll still gain merits. Jian Wushuang took the token respectfully and said, Grandfather, I'll go back first. It will take several days to reach the border, and I need to prepare. Go ahead. Shenyuan Depan waved his hand, a hint of amusement in his eyes. Although this grandson had the surname Xiamang, his temperament was very much like his own. This time, in addition to protecting the family's power, he also had to help this grandson gain some merits. He had heard that during the ancestral worship at the ancestral temple, Xiamang Laozu had summoned Xiamang Guanyu. Originally, it was a struggle between the crown prince and the second prince, but now the 9th prince had also risen unexpectedly, with quite a significant advantage as well. To claim the throne of Great Xia, one needed formidable strength, at least the strength of a 5th-order emperor, along with one's own influence. Winning over the influential figures in Great Xia was half the battle. The rest depended on the decision of the Patriarch of Great Xia. Little did they know that the current Patriarch of Great Xia had long been replaced. Now it was disguised as Yang Sanmu, and if Jian Wushuang truly had ambitions for the throne, all he needed to do was break through to the level of emperor. Then, ascending to the throne would be within his grasp. No need to vie for the position of crown prince for countless years. City of Suppression, when viewed from the outside, did not seem particularly large, but its speed was astonishing. It took only a few days to travel from the imperial city to the northern border. As Xiamang Yunjian led the army into action, the situation on the Mo Luo side was not unaffected. The well-prepared army had already started to reveal itself. At the border of Great Xia, in the muddy flow swamp, the poisonous mist obscured vision. On the day before City of Suppression arrived here, the Mo Luo army once again swept in. Majestic demon gods, treading through the swamp, rushed towards the battlefield. On the Great Xia side, the third city was also in imminent danger, and the several Tier 5 emperors who were supposed to guard the city were utterly incapable. Now, they had no choice but to abandon the city and fight their way out with their followers. However, the overwhelming presence of gods and demons in the outside world left them trembling. They couldn't even break through the encirclement. Each of these gods and demons possessed the combat power of Tier 3 emperors, and they were formed by tens of thousands of Dao lords. The countless towering gods and demons indicated the sheer number of formidable beings the Mo Luo kingdom had mobilized this time. Quick, trap them. The rest, enter the city. Leave none alive. The emperor of Mo Luo kingdom laughed arrogantly, casually tearing apart the body of a great Xia emperor with a swipe of his hand and devouring it with gusto. The lord of the third city, the Tier 5 emperor from the influential Rui Xiang clan of Great Xia, felt utter despair. All of his subordinates had fallen, and now he was the only one left. You bunch of scum, all of you can die. The Tier 5 emperor of the Rui Xiang clan transformed into a blazing sun, dazzling and fearless, charging into the army of gods and demons. Wherever he went, destruction followed. In the end, this sun gradually dimmed until it completely extinguished. The third city fell. The Mo Luo kingdom's army casually cleared the battlefield, thoroughly shattering the foundations of the city's formations, and then began to withdraw in an orderly manner. In the magic demon country, the foremost city on the frontier, inside the main hall of the central army camp, the flames flickered. Grand Elder, the third city has fallen, reported a Tier 5 emperor with a hushed voice. The frail old man sitting at the highest position trembled as he picked up a cup of tea, took a sip, and in a hoarse voice said, "Have the vanguard retreat to the Azura Plains, with the central army providing cover. Starting tonight, the tribal leaders in the rear will take over the defense of the first city." Dozens of Tier 5 emperors sat in the hall, none uttering a word. They unquestionably followed the orders of the elder of the magic demon country and never dared to disobey. The reason why the magic demon country had become so powerful today was to the Grand Elder, Qiu Ndr. Legend has it that he was once a slave, given the surname Qiu by his master's family. His master was none other than the current royal family of Mo Luo, with the strongest members being a few Tier 5 emperors. However, imprisoned grace had reached the peak of the 6th tier, having once severely wounded the reigning emperor in the chaotic domain, showcasing overwhelming strength. Yet, he chose to assist the Mo Luo royal family, the Luo clan. In the Grand Hall, in addition to the Tier 3 emperors, there was also a peak 4th tier emperor whose demonic flames raged, emitting a powerful aura. He was none other than the absolute heir of Mo Luo, the eldest prince, Rosa. He was also the person who controlled the Candle Dragon arm. The others didn't speak, but there was a hint of anger in their eyes. Grand Elder, our demonic army is now in high spirits. Withdrawing so far and letting those tribal powerhouses take the lead will undermine our momentum. Someone spoke up with dissatisfaction. The others shook their heads silently. The Grand Elder lowered his eyelids and looked at Rosa, slowly saying, "Your Highness, in battle formations, it's not just about momentum. Even if the aura is strong, it's a side path. Just like the aura on your Highness. No matter how strong, I can still overturn it with a flip of my hand." Humph! Rosa was not foolish, just discontent. With a cold snort, he directly retreated, leaving the Grand Hall. How could he not know what the Grand Elder was up to? It was just to preserve strength and lure the enemy deeper. The people of Great Xia were not fools. Did they really think they would charge in to be slaughtered? The key issue was this Grand Elder too autocratic. In the entire Mo Luo country, except for the ancestral grandmother, No one dared to oppose his orders. He would rather give up his current position than let the Luo family control the entirety of Mo Luo. But could he reverse it? Turning his head to glance at the Grand Hall, he left with lingering resentment, leading his elite forces towards the Shura Plains. After the departure of the eldest prince, there was a sense of desolation in the hall. The remaining Tier 5 emperors dared not say much. They were well aware of the personality of the Grand Elder. The token is to be handed over to the leader of the Tianxi tribe. 3 days later, the jade slip will open, and then follow the instructions on the jade slip. The Grand Elder took a deep breath, his tone carrying a hint of authority. The Tier 5 emperor beside him quickly took the token and gradually retreated. On the side of Mo Luo, the movement was minimal, as if they had long been prepared. The elite army quietly withdrew. Only some barbaric tribes and slaves were left. But there were too many of them, easily reaching billions. Mo Luo's expansion of power had plundered countless slaves. The resisting tribes were crushed, and then divided into slaves. Only a small fraction was truly treated like human beings. On the second day after the retreat of the Mo Luo army, the city of suppression arrived. The miasma over the mud flow swamp turned blood red. Numerous powerhouses were moved. The destruction of the fief might only be part of the reason. A larger reason was Mo Luo's ambition. Buzz. The city of suppression began to expand, turning into a size of billions of miles, like a war behemoth. The released power shook the surrounding mist, revealing the skeletons in the swamp. A shocking sight. Boom! The sound of horns echoed, and the North City gate opened wide. Now, of the 4 major border cities, 2 had been breached. The remnants of the 2 cities were few. We pay our respects to the Grand Marshal. General Gutong's face was pale. His strength had now reached its lowest, accompanied by several 5th-level emperors and over 1,000 people. Xia Mang Yunzhan personally ascended the North City Tower, sweeping his gaze and blinking. You have suffered. His voice trembled a bit. He had led troops into battle since childhood, loving his soldiers like sons. Seeing this tragic scene, he felt more heartache than anyone. Settle down. Xia Mang Yunzhan waved his hand, gesturing for everyone to leave. Generals such as Shenyuan Depan remained silent, standing aside. After Gutong stepped back, Xia Mang Yunzhan looked at a shadowy figure, furious. What have you been eating? With such a massive march from Mo Luo, not even a whisper was heard. Grand Marshal, when Mo Luo marched, not even the Emperor of Mo Luo knew. It was all personally arranged by that Grand Elder. The shadowy figure seemed a bit resentful, feeling helpless as well. As the top scout serving the Imperial Emperor, withholding information was a grave offense. But the other party was a Tier 6 Emperor. Xia Mang Yunzhan's eyes were fierce as he continued to inquire, Speak. How is the current situation? Reporting to the Grand Marshal, the Mo Luo country's large army that attacked the 3rd city suffered significant losses. Upon learning of our army's mobilization, they retreated to the Shura Plain. Currently, only some tribal elites are present on the front lines, hardly worth mentioning. The shadow expert reported truthfully. A thought flashed in Xia Mang Yunzhan's mind, and he paused. The elites had withdrawn to the Shura Plain, leaving only some tribal strongmen to resist. Was this a strategy to lure the enemy deeper? But this tactic seemed too basic. Late at night, the northern city tower was as bright as daylight. The first day was spent analyzing the situation and constructing teleportation arrays with the 2nd and 1st major cities for emergencies. It wasn't until the 7th day that the city showed signs of activity. On this day, Jian Wushuang led people on patrol in the East City. Usually, he was accompanied by a group of Emperor guards, and the recruited army was in the military camp. Casually wandering around, Jian Wushuang was about to descend from the city wall when he noticed a distant sky gradually adorned with colors. Soon after, numerous meteors fell violently, turning into countless streaks of light and massive craters. Enemy attack! The horns sounded in the next moment. However, Jian Wushuang remained calm. The direction was the North City Wall, not far away. If there were any movements, Xiamang Yunjian would undoubtedly notice, despite no one leaving the city at the moment. But everything around, every move, was likely within Xiamang Yunjian's control. Otherwise, he wouldn't hold the position of commander. Let's go back to the central military hall. Jian Wushuang immediately led his people down from the city wall. When they had just arrived at the central military hall, a considerable number of people had already gathered. Several generals inside the hall were loudly discussing the matter of leaving the city. Commander, the Mo Luo's army left in this place is not much. Now is an excellent opportunity. Humph. Can't the commotion outside the city just now explain it? It's clearly their scheme. If we rashly leave the city, we will definitely be ambushed. Shenyuan Depan and other nobles had no particular opinion on this. It was best not to leave the city, so they remained neutral, just watching the show. Sitting in the main seat, Xiamang Yunjian held the token in his hand, deep in thought. He had just received intelligence that the disturbance outside was related to the leader of the Tianqi tribe. Things were not so simple. The argument above was intense, but Jian Wushuang could see through it. Although not powerful, he was insightful. The internal connection between Mo Luo and the Kuei organization had developed rapidly in recent years, not solely due to the efforts of the Grand Elder. The Kuei organization's support was also significant. Now that the old ancestor of Great Xia had been replaced, although the internal cleansing and replacement had not yet occurred, if both sides' high-ranking members were connected to the Kuei organization, this war might end in frustration. Fortunately, the old man with the sheep's horns had disguised himself as a member of Kuei and infiltrated Great Xia. He had mentioned before that the reason for following the army into battle this time was for the Candle Dragon arm. Great Xia was definitely in favor of starting the war. Mo Luo went so far as to directly pull out 2 major cities. The current situation could not be resolved by just defeating the tribal army. If Mo Luo thought that the Great Xia, after devouring the massive army of the frontline tribes, would withdraw, then their expectations were too simplistic. After much deliberation from above, the decision was made to leave the city today. They proceeded to inspect the situation outside the city. The vanguard scouts were the elite forces of Great Xia. A full 10,000 soldiers, accompanied by 100 emperors, led by a Tier 4 emperor. However, these forces were not sufficient. The core forces were mobilized, and an additional 3,000 and the troops of the 5 army camps had to act. 5 army camps. Mobilize 400,000 troops. As the strongest among the 3,000 camps, Shenyuan Depan's voice was deep. The 3,000 camps can contribute 200,000, 3 Tier 4 emperors, along with a total of 600,000 troops. The emperors numbered in the hundreds. This time, who is willing to personally lead the troops? Xiamang Yunjian surveyed the crowd below. Without a Tier 5 emperor to lead, these people were like loose sand, not even comparable to those tribes. I am willing to take the blame and lead the way to investigate the anomalies, spoke General Gudong, who had regained his strength. Others were somewhat surprised. Sending General Gudong, one of the 3 major generals of the empire, for a mere reconnaissance mission seemed like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Xiamang Yunjian didn't have time to dissuade them and could only nod in agreement. Then everyone withdrew. Jian Wushuang followed Shenyuan Depan back to the eastern city military camp. Grandfather, this time I am willing to lead a group outside the city. Jian Wushuang immediately bowed and offered his service. Shenyuan Depan was somewhat surprised. After advising for a while and seeing that Shimang Guanyu had made up his mind, he didn't stop him. General Xing Daorong, take orders. This time, go out of the city to investigate the anomaly. Soon, the large army was assembled and majestically marched out of the city of suppression from the northern gate. The vanguard of 10,000 scouts had already gone out. Now, the 600,000-strong army formed a formation, slowly marching towards the location of the disturbance. General Gudong personally led the troops. Due to Shimang Guanyu's special status, he followed Gudong to command the central army. His private army of 10,000 didn't attract much attention. If they formed a battle array, apart from Gudong, he would be the second strongest in this expedition. Report, General. It has been discovered that there are 100-yard-sized gray-white stone spheres in those deep pits. Gutong's expression remained unchanged, casually saying, "Continue investigating." The large army approached slowly, a billion miles away from the disturbance. A group of strong individuals from the Xianxia tribe hid in the void. In the swamp, countless strange beasts lurked. 3 leaders. Will these strange beasts really charge over? The strong individual in the void asked with some uncertainty. The 3 leaders were confident. With a sinister smile, one of them said, "Don't underestimate those magic stones. They are the favorite of these void crawlers." Hee hee. In the swamp, triangular void crawlers emitted an anxious sound, exceptionally terrifying. These crawlers had no aura and could only be discovered by the naked eye. At a glance, they were endless, all at the level of Tao Lords, with some even at the level of emperors. Someone has started the Godstone. The hidden strong individuals from the Xianxia tribe exclaimed in joy. Look, void fissures. In the murky swamp, the void crawlers, hidden from sight, could actually ripple their bodies to tear through space. They exuded a strong aura of the void, the very essence of the void. On the other side, the army surrounded hundreds of deep pits, dispatching people to investigate. Jian Wushuang stood at the edge of one of the pits, gazing at the stones within, curiously asking, "Old Bai, do you recognize these things?" Don't. I've never seen them before." Bai Junwang shook his head. Having lived from ancient times to the present, he had witnessed all sorts of scenes, but these stones were truly unfamiliar. Even Bai Junwang didn't recognize them, and Jian Wushuang felt a subtle sense of unease. The Earth Realm's heritage resembled the ancient era the most, especially those tribes with long-standing legacies. Crack. A Tier 3 emperor, deep within a pit, probed and touched the seemingly round stone. The next moment it began to crack open. The onlookers' expressions tightened slightly, and as the sphere split open, it revealed an unexpected hollowness. Inside, there was nothing, colorless and tasteless. Seeing that there was nothing amiss, the crowd breathed a sigh of relief. Gutong, silent until now, showed no reaction. The spheres in the other pits also began to crack open one after another. Over 100 spheres split open, with only 18 containing an ancient scepter. The rest, like the first one, were hollow. "This is a formation. Quickly, get rid of it," Jian Wushuang roared, but it was already too late. The scepters erupted with streams of light, instantly covering the surrounding billions of miles. "Call for help." Gutong was the first to crush his token, looking back towards the city of suppression. At this moment, the massive city behind them was gone. It was over. Many Emperor-level experts realized they had fallen into a trap. Even if the message could be transmitted, the powerful figures in the city of suppression would likely be unable to locate them due to the spatial blockade. Tick-tock. Jian Wushuang remained relatively calm, fortunate enough. Crouching down, he gazed at the murky water in a puddle beneath his feet. Just moments ago it was tranquil, but now ripples began to form. This prompted him to quickly stand up and look ahead. Although his thought power couldn't detect any changes, his physical strength was formidable. His observational skills surpassed even those of an emperor. At a glance, he saw the scene unfolding millions of miles away. Countless wriggling crawlers were madly rushing towards this direction. Formation. Seeing the perilous situation, Jian Wushuang swiftly moved, retreating behind the others. The emperor, who had long developed a reflex to the word formation, instantly gathered around Jian Wushuang, and the Luo Ho battle formation quietly assembled. A quaint voice echoed from the majestic mouth of a deity and demon. "Luo Ho." Xiamang Guanyu's bristling fur caused a commotion. If it were anyone else daring to act like this, they would have been slashed and cut long ago. However, Xiamang Guanyu, being a prince, coupled with the current blockade of the area, if Xiamang Guanyu were to fall, Gutong would also find it hard to escape blame. The next moment, Gutong was stunned. In the distance, the mud in the swamp surged, and something unknown had reached them. Prepare to face the enemy. At this point, They couldn't care less whether the city of suppression had received the message. They had to withstand this obstacle in front of them first. 600,000 troops lined up in a straight line, and numerous formations began to take shape. Ancient wild beasts, contemporary deities and demons, and powerful emperors all soared into the air. Soon, the 600,000 troops converged into several hundred ancient powerhouses. Each one of them possessed the strength of a Tier 4 emperor. General Gudong stood tall at the front, having restored his strength. He was now a peak Tier 5 emperor, the strongest person present. Slaughter them all! The cries of battle echoed through the sky, and the void crawlers surging from the mire emerged, wielding their claws as they charged towards them. The formation transformed by Jian Wushuang, the Luoho battle formation, was positioned at the rear. Now was not the time for him to take action. First, let the emperor in the front block them. In case too much energy was consumed, it wouldn't be good if they couldn't escape later. Buzz! As the two sides clashed, the hundreds of formations condensed divine creatures or ancient beasts effortlessly tore and crushed those unsightly creatures. Witnessing this scene, a hint of fear appeared in Jian Wushuang's eyes. This was similar to the situation in Chihuang City back then, resisting millions of devouring demons. However, these crawlers were even more powerful and aggressive than those devouring demons. If a few Tier 5 emperors appeared, he wouldn't be afraid. However, the strength of these crawlers varied, but their numbers were frighteningly large. Moreover, many of them were at the emperor level. While the group could freely slaughter them, they were also depleting their divine power. When they were almost exhausted, the strong members of those tribes would rush over. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, his gaze profound. At this moment, if he didn't lend a hand, it would be difficult for him to protect himself once these people were in trouble. Originally, this visit was for the beast god weapon, but unexpectedly, after being here for a few days, nothing had been achieved. The first time they left the city, they encountered such a tricky ambush. They hoped that the city of suppression could come up with a solution. Otherwise, everything might end here. The Luoho battle formation was extremely suitable for Xiamang Guanyu to cultivate the heavenly demon supreme art. With each step, he covered a distance of millions of miles. His towering figure was immense, and with a single fist, he smashed the marsh into a deep pit. Hoo! Ha! Every strike felt like hitting mud, weak and powerless. This was simply using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, a bit of overkill. This won't work. It's better to let those Dao lords separate. Jian Wushuang quickly noticed that something was wrong. As one of the three generals of the empire, Gudong had long noticed it. However, if they broke the formation now, they would incur significant losses. What if the formation just dispersed, and the enemy appeared? Jian Wushuang felt increasingly exhausted as the battle went on. Gritting his teeth, he directly dispelled the formation. Take the people to the edge. I'll stay here alone. Xiamang Guanyu turned to the several emperors and said. The leader of the guards was somewhat worried, but seeing Jian Wushuang's resolute expression, he turned and led the others to the edge. Jian Wushuang momentarily forgot his identity. He seemed to be nothing more than a Dao lord. In the next moment, the heavenly demon descended in its 8-armed form. The enhanced beast god domain suddenly surged, and his divine body instantly soared to 20,000-fold of its normal power. 8 arms emitted dazzling light, traversing the battlefield. Glancing at Xiamang Guanyu, Gudong realized that if they didn't withdraw the formation soon, they would be in deep trouble. The consumption was too significant. Everyone weaken the formation. The emperor will act alone, and the Dao lords will assemble the formation in the rear. Gudong, resolute, gave the direct command. The endless void crawlers seemed like an ocean. Jian Wushuang swung his 8 arms, shattering countless crawlers. When those crawlers broke apart, they seemed colorless and tasteless, but they carried a trace of the void's power, invading the surrounding space. The void, which even the emperor would usually struggle to break, could now be easily destroyed with a casual gesture. What is this? Jian Wushuang stared wide-eyed, taking a sharp breath. Bai Junwang, who was inside him, exclaimed, They are destroying the void. Destroying the void meant dragging them all into annihilation. This move was ruthless. No wonder, with just these people, the Tianqi tribe could easily defeat them with a casual deployment. But why hadn't the Tianqi tribe made a move yet? Clearly, they were watching them self-destruct. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but turn his head to look at the barrier behind him. Sure enough, in the next moment, countless troops arrived. It was Shen Yuandepan personally leading the army, numbering over 10 million. The barrier was unidirectional, easily broken from the outside, but getting out was extremely difficult. "Grandpa, we've been fooled!" Xiamang Guanyu shouted and rushed over. Shen Yuandepan also noticed the changes in the void. With so many powerful individuals entering this space, many parts of the void had started to rupture, revealing pitch-black gaps, inside of which flowed dangerous spatial turbulence. Luckier individuals might emerge from other places, while those less fortunate would be abruptly severed by spatial fissures. Moreover, within these fissures existed a potent force of devouring, evidently possessing the power of cosmic black holes. Terrifying. Horrifying. "Let's get out of here first." Shen Yuandepan's expression changed. Several Dao lords had already been swallowed into the void, and if they didn't leave soon, everyone would be ensnared. Gadong turned around and flew directly towards Shen Yuandepan. Upon seeing him, he anxiously said, "Brother Shen Yuan, someone must stabilize the space here. If we don't return soon, people from the City of Suppression will come over." "All right, General Gu, it's up to you. I'll lead my troops to the source, and you guard the space here," Shen Yuandepan said, then enveloped Xiamang Guanyu with divine power and led millions of troops against the current. Gadong, staying behind, had a change in his eyes. Without saying much, he cast a hand seal, and the space instantly calmed down. The void crawlers were quite feeble, incapable of obstructing the massive army. Shen Yuandepan also issued orders not to kill these crawlers. The army covered the sky and moved against the current. Far in the source of the void, powerful individuals from the Tianqi tribe sensed a massive aura approaching, their gazes flickering. "Let's go. They've discovered us." According to the instructions of the Grand Elder, "Hold the border at all costs," the leader said, turning away. Many harbored discontent deep within their hearts, questioning why fate chose their Tianqi tribe to stay behind. Even with this last resort, as a massive army approached, they could hold their ground, but what lay beyond? City of Suppression. Inside the central military hall, Xiamang Yunzhan frowned deeply. It had been an hour since Shen Yuandepan, along with his men, departed. No sign, no sound. What was to be done? No matter how strong the Tianqi tribe was, they couldn't possibly swallow up an army of millions directly. There must be some conspiracy at play. Give the order. The 5 army camps moves out, bypass the barrier, and head straight for the Mo Luft's lair. General Zhong Liang of the Left Army, lead the left flank to enter the barrier again. Dual strategies. 1. To never abandon those inside the barrier. 2. Heading towards the Mo Luo's border stronghold to probe their reality. The left general, Zhong Liang, one of the 3 major generals, felt something amiss this time. He believed that this expedition was already off. The official explanation within the empire was to reduce the vassals, but on the battlefield, facing the ambitions of the Mo Luo nation, they had to fight even if they didn't reduce the vassals. Now, the main force of the Mo Luo nation had retreated to the Shura plain, almost reaching their main camp. Only the strong of the Tianqi tribe were left, causing confusion. If they continued to be careless, they might face complete annihilation, let alone winning. There were also significant issues with the overall command. At this time, hastily deploying troops was already a massive risk. But on the battlefield, only one person's words mattered. Even if he voiced objections, in such a critical moment, nothing could be reversed. The army mobilized again, and the forces in the City of Suppression were reduced by more than half in an instant. Most of the Tier 5 emperors were among those mobilized. Xiamang Yunzhan took out a jade slip, gazing at the ancient characters above, perplexed in his heart, but he could only follow the instructions written there. In the heart of the Mo Luo border. After the departure of the Grand Elder, The strongest figure here is the chief of the Tianqi tribe, a peak-level power of Tier 5, with 10 emperors under his command, all at Tier 5. The elite forces numbered no more than 10 million. Against such a force, a direct confrontation might not even withstand the 3,000 camps led by Xianxia Depan. Chief, Xianxia Depan has led an army of over 10 million out of the marsh, and the 5 army camps of the City of Suppression will arrive shortly. The scout respectfully conveyed the information he had gathered. The chief of Tianqi tribe sat steadily on the high platform, his gaze sharp. Behind all this was the guidance of the Grand Elder, but at this point, even he couldn't figure out why the Grand Elder sought to achieve this. Continuously luring the main forces of Great Xia into the marsh, now half of them had entered, and they were about to face the Tianqi tribe, yet nothing had happened. If this continued, they would have to fight desperately. At present, both sides were at a disadvantage in terms of manpower. Neither side knew what the next step should be. On the side of Xianxia Depan, they had already reached the origin of the void. It was a black hole of immense size, with an endless devouring force that was awe-inspiring. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but swallow as he watched. A black hole? Devouring. If this black hole were moved to the origin source sea, he could elevate the spatial origin source to the realm of Mahayana, even without merging the Tao. The spatial origin source had several levels. Firstly, it was the condensation of space, something Jian Wushuang had achieved long ago. The formation of space could be considered the realm of stars. Later, space condensed countless stars. Jian Wushuang reached the Taiyin realm, considered a small achievement. Now, Jian Wushuang was in the Taiyin realm where the sun and moon manifested, and the space was stable. The next level was the Mahayana realm, the black hole realm. He possessed the power of devouring and had a good understanding of black holes, but entering this realm required a considerable expenditure of energy. After the black hole realm, there was the void universe. That was the space of the universe. Once the void universe condensed, it would be the pinnacle of space. It was the absolute pinnacle realm. Stars, Taiyin, black hole, universe. The 4 realms. Generally, after breaking through to the emperor level of cultivation, one could master the origin source of space and reach the star realm. In the outside world, a Tier 2 emperor was needed to reach such a level, and in the Earth realm, a Tier 3 emperor was required. As for the Taiyin realm, it was controlled when reaching Tier 4 of the emperor. In the Earth realm, only many Tier 5 emperors could barely control it. The black hole could only be controlled by Tier 5 and 6 emperors. As for the universe realm, it required an emperor at the pinnacle of Tier 6 to control it. Jian Wushuang, only at the Tao Lord level, could reach the Taiyin realm. Many Tier 5 emperors in the Earth realm could only reach this level. Even some peak Tier 4 emperors from the outside world were only at this level. If he were to devour that black hole, directly achieving the black hole realm, he would step into the Mahayana realm. In the future, merging with the Tao would be even smoother. The countless fragments in the sea of origin source were like stars, and 2 massive pieces were converging, forming the Taiyin. All that remained was a black hole. If left to grow on its own, these fragments would eventually coalesce and digest, creating a black hole. But that was too slow. Jian Wushuang revealed a slight smile, unexpectedly hitting the jackpot this time with such an enormous stroke of luck. He turned to Xianxia Depan, bowing respectfully. "Grandfather, this is the origin source of the void. The crawlers emerged from here. I am willing to guard this place." Xianxia Depan glanced at the black hole and nodded. Although he was a peak Tier 5, he had not yet mastered the realm of black holes and had limited understanding of it. In his view, Xia Mangguanyu's willingness to stay here was likely due to the unpredictable and dangerous forces ahead. Staying put seemed safer. "Good, Yuer. Select some people to stay here and keep watch." Jian Wushuang cast a glance, choosing dozens of Tier 3 emperors, along with some Tier 4 emperors he brought, and the thousands who had gathered to form the Luoho battle formation. Those selected breathed a sigh of relief. Going further meant approaching the Mo Luo nation's nest at the border, a place much more dangerous than this. Staying behind here while they advanced was a great opportunity. Watching the retreating army, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but smile. He turned to look at the people who stayed with him. Ever since he devoured the origin source of time, the evil aura within his origin source had diminished, completely suppressed by him. Now, looking at these unsuspecting followers, that malevolent aura gradually surged. Seeing the somewhat nervous emperor, Jian Wushuang revealed a hint of surprise and looked towards Xiamang Guanyu, saying, "Your Highness, why don't you take a rest here for a moment? We'll handle the watch." No, it's time for you all to rest." Whoosh! Xiamang Guanyu's appearance began to change, instantly reverting to his original form. The powerful thought power swept across the surrounding tens of millions of miles. "Hee, haven't used this move in a long time." Jian Wushuang grinned and said, "One thought." Buzz! The heavens and earth surged, and the aura circulated. The space within tens of millions of miles was instantly engulfed and collapsed. This vast expanse was his world. In the east, a dazzling sun rose, and in the west, a dark moon accompanied by an extreme cold force gradually ascended. And Jian Wushuang himself was like a black hole. What is this? He's not Xiamang Guanyu. The first to react were those Tier 4 emperors who had been recruited by Jian Wushuang. They were most afraid of death and had never willingly joined Jian Wushuang, only doing so for the Godstones. It was a bit regrettable for the Lu Ho battle formation. After practicing for so long, it had never been used once, and now it was going to be overkill. Devouring these people wouldn't actually provide much improvement. The main issue was that these people were too troublesome. What he wanted to devour was that black hole. Even Bai Junwang, hiding within Jian Wushuang's body, watched with an accelerated heartbeat. These people were excellent materials for a blood sacrifice. No matter who you are, daring to disguise as the great Xia prince and attacking us, capture him first. There were dozens of emperors present, including several Tier 4 emperors. In the past, Jian Wushuang might have had trouble dealing with so many people. But now, his thought force condensed the universe, swallowing and condensing a black hole. And the power of all things is the power of the universe. A mere emperor dares to resist the will of the universe, simply seeking death. Universe! Jian Wushuang roared, and the void within thousands of miles instantly burst and collapsed. These Tier 4 emperors couldn't resist, considering their strength was generally only at ordinary levels of Tier 4. The universe formed, and these emperors were unable to move under its oppression. Those Dao lords and some weaker emperors even directly fell. Only those Tier 4 emperors could still resist. Jian Wushuang transformed directly into an 8-armed heavenly demon, grabbing one Tier 4 emperor in each hand, and directly crushed the opponent's head. An evil aura rose, starting to devour the origins of these people. Bai Junwang was already used to seeing this scene, but when he saw Jian Wushuang's skilled techniques, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Especially seeing Jian Wushuang devouring his victims without intending to offer blood sacrifices, he wanted to remind him. However, when he saw the crimson eyes of Jian Wushuang, he swallowed his words back. In just 3 breaths, everyone present was completely devoured. An aura of evil lingered, akin to thunder flickering in the surroundings. With a casual release of divine power, a force congealed and thrown out, creating a thunderous explosion that swept the battlefield clean. The sky condensed into a fine drizzle. Previously, when there was a phenomenon of emperor fall, there would still be some scattered origin sources. But now, not to mention origin fragments, there wasn't even a trace of the emperor's lingering regret. Everything was devoured by him. Exhaling, the one-thought universe abruptly froze. These people could only be considered as a cup of tea before a meal. The real feast was the black hole. Staring at the enormous black hole, the devouring force within it was many times stronger than him. If it were only the power of devouring, he probably wouldn't be able to swallow the opponent. Instead, he might end up being engulfed. For a moment, Jian Wushuang was unsure how to proceed. Crackling. Inside, the force of devouring contained endless destruction, a power surpassing that of a Tier 5 emperor, something Jian Wushuang couldn't contend with. Thought power. A thought stirred in Jian Wushuang's mind. The immense thought power entered the black hole along with the devouring power, only to be destroyed by the force of annihilation as soon as it entered. Reconcentrating thought power, this time it was wrapped in the devouring force, attempting to slip through unnoticed, just like the force within the black hole. This time, indeed, it penetrated to a deeper level. Jian Wushuang even felt as if he had entered another universe. However, before he could continue exploring, that train of thought was annihilated once again. Neither telekinesis nor devouring force worked. Jian Wushuang was left with only the power of all things. Embracing all things, much like everything devoured by a black hole. The steamed bun, once thrown to the dog, was irretrievable. Jian Wushuang found himself in a dilemma. The black hole resembled a table of tantalizing food, yet he couldn't lay his hands on it. Bai Junwang kept his eyes fixed on the black hole, utterly clueless. However, the more he looked, the more familiar it seemed. Finally, he exclaimed, "What is this?" At that moment, he thought of the abyss where Xinling dwelled, finding a striking resemblance between it and the black hole. Though the abyss lacked the devouring power, when he was above it, he felt a force that didn't belong to this world. Back then, he dared not ask too much. Without that abyss, he would have withered and died long ago. Unexpectedly, Jian Wushuang remarked, "What's this? Do you have some understanding of black holes too?" Though Bai Junwang pursued the path of the divine body, his origin source was not weak, likely reaching the level of a black hole. After all, as a pinnacle expert who ascended to the peak with a divine body, even if his origin was inferior, he should have reached the realm of black holes. Just like those strong ones following the origin source path, even with a weak divine body, it would be 30,000 times stronger. Some dual cultivators with 50,000-fold stronger divine bodies could reach the cosmic realm with their origin source. That's what defined true strength. The ultimate emperor's origin progressed faster, like Jian Wushuang. Perhaps, by the time he reached the Tier 5 emperor, he could aspire to the level of universe. The sole ultimate emperor in the original universe was truly extraordinary. By the Tier 5, his origin source had reached the universe level. Subsequently, he condensed the embryonic form of universe origin source, creating his own universe secret techniques. Now, entering Tier 6, he probably surpassed the Qixin Temple. The ultimate emperor at Tier 6, with his origin source at that level, likely had no match even in the Qixin Temple. Jian Wushuang's speed wasn't considered slow. Compared to those ultimate Dao lords on the Grave God Mountain, he had already surpassed them by a significant margin. Now, he could effortlessly kill Tier 4 emperors. If he devoured this black hole, he could reach the realm of black holes. This was simply unheard of for a cultivator at the Dao Lord level. But now he was stuck here, feeling somewhat helpless for a moment. Bai Junwang grunted, reluctant to say more. Jian Wushuang knew that it must be related to that Xinling. "Ask Xinling for me. Is this black hole related to him?" Jian Wushuang was persistent. With the benefits laid out before him, he was not willing to give up. The beast god weapons and such were just external objects. True prowess lay in one's own strength. In the future, he not only needed to possess treasures stronger than beast god weapons but also acquire treasures even more formidable than those. After waiting for about a moment, Bai Junwang shook his head. "Lord Xinling hasn't responded. It seems unwilling to inform us," he said. Jian Wushuang knew that without showing some sincerity, the Xinling wouldn't pay any attention to him at all. However, the kind of sincerity the other party sought, like what Bai Junwang was offering, meant selling oneself to the Xinling. That was not acceptable. Unable to find an alternative, he decided to enter the black hole himself. Of course, it would be his avatar going in. He wouldn't dare risk his true self. In case of a mishap, he'd be left in a sorry state. A gleam of light condensed at his fingertips, and a figure resembling Jian Wushuang emerged. "Greetings, my true self. Greetings, my avatar." Although it seemed like a conversation between two people, it was essentially self-talk. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang turned his head and noticed a chaotic aura behind him. Obviously, someone had arrived. He quickly reverted to the appearance of Xiamang Guanyu, while his avatar leaped into the black hole directly. Just as he turned to see who had arrived, he found the devouring force behind him surging instantly. He almost got swallowed but swiftly retreated billions of miles to safety. Meanwhile, his avatar followed the force of devouring into the deepest part of the black hole. In the quagmire, the army descended in an instant. The leading figure, upon seeing only Xia Meng Guanyu present, was momentarily stunned. Ninth Prince, why are you alone? Not counting the first group, Shenyuan Depan led millions of troops, including several Tier 5 emperors who had come together. Gudong could be heard saying as Shenyuan Depan led the way forward with his people. Jian Wushuang stepped forward, slightly bowing with clasped hands, saying, "General, just now there was a black hole here. I took responsibility for guarding this place, but suddenly, the black hole erupted. The others sacrificed themselves to protect me." As Xiameng Guanyu spoke, his eyes turned red, and he choked up a bit. Upon hearing this, the leader did not inquire further, only offering a few words of comfort. With the disappearance of the black hole, Xiameng Guanyu had no reason to stay behind. He followed the army once again. However, after they left, the entire swamp began to reverse, and the space shattered completely. Previously, with Gudong guarding the space, now unattended, the space here fell into eternal destruction. The space collapsed, becoming a forbidden zone. Even a Tier 5 emperor would perish if lost within it. In less than an hour, the two armies would converge. On the other side, Zhongliang led the left army, which had also gathered, bringing 50 million troops to the borders of the Mo Luo Nation's stronghold. The stronghold set up by Mo Luo Nation at the border was a massive fortress, equally an eternal treasure. Now, the leader of the heavenly demon sect was in a hurry. This contradicted what the Grand Elder said earlier. Wasn't it said that those who entered the swamp couldn't get out? The Grand Elder of the Mo Luo Nation, concealed in the depths of the void, also furrowed his brow. The black hole disappeared, taking only one person. "It seems I have to rely on myself." Don't forget he was a Tier 6 emperor. In this expedition, the strongest force of Great Xia was the Tier 5 emperors. Could he still be afraid? As a practitioner of the demonic path, how could he fear? Ding! A withered arm protruded from the shabby sleeve, gently lifting a finger, and a sharp glint appeared at the fingertip. This glint then erupted into a radiance akin to the sun. At this moment, within Jian Wushuang's body, Bai Junwang roared, "Hurry! There's an absolute peak-level expert." Absolute expert? Jian Wushuang was somewhat confused. Wasn't the strongest in the Mo Luo Nation only at the peak of Tier 6? The old ancestor of Great Xia had the strength of a top Tier 6, completely unafraid of the opponent. Why was there suddenly an expert from the Absolute Summit making a move? The next moment, a dazzling sun descended. Everyone held their breath. Even the Tier 5 emperors had eternal treasures and instantly hid in their treasure palaces. Jian Wushuang had been following Shenyuan Depan all along and was the first to take refuge. But the others outside were in a sorry state. With just one radiant attack, half of Great Xia's army perished. Among the several hundred four emperors, only a few survived. Several Tier 5 emperors also perished. After all, not everyone possessed eternal treasures. Whether it was Shenyuan Depan, Zhongliang, or Gudong, they all scattered to escape. Encountering a Tier 6 emperor, no matter how capable they were, they had to flee. Can't let them go. Xianxia, you lead the pursuit. Our main force from the Mo Luo Nation will also move out, but I can't intervene any further. The Grand Elder left these words behind, then disappeared into the void, his presence vanishing in an instant, as if this entire world had never acknowledged his existence. Far on the horizon, a eunuch in a red python-patterned robe faintly appeared. Glancing at the situation without taking any action, he slowly retreated towards the city of suppression. Supreme Pinnacle? How is that possible? The strength of the eunuch was only at the Tier 6 and ordinary Tier 6 at best. If you added the treasure inside him, he reached the pinnacle of the Tier 6, similar to the old ancestor of Great Xia. In this expedition of Great Xia, there must be a hidden Tier 6 emperor, overseeing everything. Just didn't expect a supreme pinnacle expert to appear. Originally, there were only 3 supreme pinnacle experts in the entire Tiannan. One was the patriarch of the Nalan family, who had already fallen. The other was the ruler of the chaotic domain, Zhu Qing. The last one was the ruler of Great Jin Empire, the undefeated imperial dynasty in Tiannan. Now, there were only 2 supreme pinnacles alive. How could a mysterious supreme pinnacle appear? Could it be the ruler of the chaotic domain? That's also a possibility. Great Xia joined forces with several superpowers to suppress the expansion of the chaotic domain. Perhaps they angered the ruler of the chaotic domain. But did the ruler need to take action like this? If the one making a move was that supreme pinnacle expert, the grand elder of the Luo nation, this battle would likely spell their doom. Jian Wushuang, who was once again crazily fleeing, felt a bit emotional. How come every time it was him running while others chased? Fortunately, this time he wasn't the primary target. In the main hall, Shenyuan Depan manipulated the Eternal Treasure Palace, and several Tier 4 emperors who were fortunate enough were also present. Luckily, this time the Shenyuan family sent Shenyuan Depan. Otherwise, today several princes would have to die. Jian Wushuang sat on a stone seat, feeling uneasy. In his heart, he began to question Bai Junwang. Is the opponent really a supreme pinnacle? He couldn't decide. If it truly was a supreme pinnacle, escaping today would be extremely difficult. They didn't have any reinforcements. If it was a Tier 6 emperor, there might still be precautions on the side of Great Xia, and a Tier 6 emperor might come to oversee. But if it was a supreme pinnacle expert, Great Xia would have no chance. The city of suppression would have to flee. Similar to what he was thinking, the city of suppression and the remaining 2 large cities on the border were all in the process of moving, preparing to run together. As soon as the eunuch discovered the mysterious supreme pinnacle expert taking action, he immediately sent the message to the imperial city. For a while, the imperial city was in turmoil. A supreme pinnacle expert appeared, and it was a supreme pinnacle expert from the Luo country. Such a level of strength could change the entire situation in Tiannan. If things went badly, the entire Great Xia might be buried with it. Bai Junwang was somewhat surprised and truthfully explained. When the other party didn't make a move, I thought it was an ordinary Tier 6 peak emperor. However, the power he displayed when he just started condensing his momentum surpassed the norm and reached the absolute peak. His strength is extremely strong. Comparable to Wu's was Dharma body. Although there is still a gap between him and me, his strength is already at the pinnacle in the earth realm. Jian Wushuang, on the other hand, rolled his eyes. At this moment, he still didn't forget to boast about his own strength. Now that he was almost done for, right? He suddenly remembered that the one currently in charge of Great Xia was the old man with goat horns. Great Xia shouldn't easily be defeated. The temple couldn't just stand by and watch such an absolute peak powerhouse emerge. He couldn't notify the temple, but with the help of the people from the Kuei organization, it might be possible. Enough, don't talk about useless things. Hurry up and contact the people from Kuei. Find out who the other party is and see if we can get some face. Bai Junwang said as he was about to make contact. However, he noticed that there had been no movement behind him. His voice slightly sank as he spoke. It's over. This side of the world has been sealed off again, and messages can't be transmitted. But there's some good news. That absolute peak powerhouse hasn't made a move. The world was sealed off again. Jian Wushuang was just about to despair when he heard that the absolute peak powerhouse hadn't caught up, which genuinely relieved him. Without the absolute peak powerhouse chasing them, even if the space was sealed, they could slowly fly out. Don't be too careless. There are several Tier 5 emperors chasing from behind. Great Xia is afraid it's going to be completely wiped out this time. Bai Junwang shook his head after sensing the aura from behind. The strong from the Tianqi tribe were approaching, and their numbers were not small. Chasing them were the strong from the Tianqi tribe, and their leader was now trembling with fear. The attack just now surpassed his understanding of a Tier 6 emperor. It was too powerful. Leader, ahead is the head of the Shenyuan clan from Great Xia, at the peak of Tier 5. We may not be able to take him down. How about letting others pursue him while we go after that ancient fellow? His strength is average. The chief of the Tianqi tribe snorted coldly, wanting to scold his subordinates for their short-sightedness. Just now, the Grand Elder made a move, and his strength was unparalleled. With a single blow, he broke through half of Great Xia's army. This expedition of Great Xia is likely to end in failure. Now is their good chance to make contributions. Taking risks now is better than being abandoned at the border trying to stop the Great Xia army, just like what happened earlier. Just pursue. I don't care about the Tier 5 Emperor of Great Xia, said the chief with a raised eyebrow. His strength among the Tier 5 was already at its peak. Perhaps only that Xia Mang Yunjian could pose a threat to him. The others were not a concern. Moreover, this time he led 4 Tier 4 emperors to besiege a peak Tier 5 emperor, and they had a good chance of success. Soon, their group approached the precious palace controlled by Shenyuan Depan. Old man Shenyuan, surrender, and I can guarantee you won't die. Ha ha! Unrestrained laughter made Shenyuan Depan's face turn cold. Surrender? His entire clan was in the Great Xia imperial city. How could he surrender? Moreover, his 2 outstanding sons were in the city of suppression. If he surrendered now, not only would it be a blow to the clan, but even his 4th son, who was currently breaking through, would be obstructed in his Dao heart. Surrendering to save oneself would mean the doom of the entire clan. If he continued to fight, there was only a slim chance of survival, but the family could be preserved. Even if he fell, as long as the family endured, the Shenyuan clan would thrive. In the palace, Anshui, the 4th son, was on the verge of a breakthrough. The eldest, Shenyuan Anqing, had the ability to control the family. Everything had a way out. He could die without regrets. As he was about to be caught up, Shenyuan Depan turned the great hall around and came to a halt. Shenyuan Depan stood up, glanced at Jian Wushuang and the other several Tier 4 emperors, shaking his head. No reinforcements and 50 million troops have fallen like this. What is going on? In previous wars, it was not like this. How could a Tier 6 emperor suddenly make a move, and so powerful, surpassing the Tier 5 emperors he had seen by so much? You are the prince of Great Xia. Don't disgrace the Xia Mang clan. Shenyuan Depan directly killed the other several Tier 4 emperors, leaving only Xianyang Guanyu. Then, he took out a small white box and said lightly, "One will die in battle, and you?" Jian Wushuang stepped down from the stone seat and walked to the white jade box, picking it up. "Don't worry, Grandpa. One, Xia Mang Guanyu, will never surrender." After saying this, he opened the jade box and swallowed the pills inside. Watching the lifeless Xia Mang Guanyu, Shenyuan Depan revealed a touch of madness, resolutely leaving the great hall. After he left the hall, Jian Wushuang's true form turned into dust and followed Shenyuan Depan out of the hall. The dimly lit hall only left behind the lifeless body of Jian Wushuang. The other corpses failed to retain their integrity. The pitch-black hall appeared even darker in the light streaming from the exit. Great Xia crumbled. Day by day, the city of suppression departed the border with the remaining troops. The Tier 5 emperors who had escaped the initial attack frantically fled, but none managed to escape, all meeting their end in the mire. One of the 3 generals, Gut Ong, went missing in the swamp. Zhong Liang fell in battle. Shenyuan Depan, a Tier 5 peak powerhouse akin to the founding father of the Tianzi nation, fought to the death, ultimately severely injuring the leader of the Tianqi tribe and choosing self-destruction. Not a single corpse was left behind. Even Xiamang Guanyu, the 9th prince, died in his first battle as part of the vanguard. His soul lamp was completely extinguished. Xiamang Guanyu's identity became useless, and Jian Wushuang couldn't be bothered to continue the charade. He destroyed it directly. He was now a small guard among the elite hawk dog. The hawk dogs were an elite guard for the ruling family of the Mo Luo kingdom. At the pinnacle of Dao Lord level, comparable to an emperor, he was specifically responsible for protecting the royal family. In the imperial city of Great Xia, the entire city was in mourning. The imperial emperor deep within the imperial palace contacted neighboring countries and even informed the ruler of the Great Jin kingdom about the appearance of that mysterious peak-level figure. Upon hearing that it was a peak-level expert, no one dared to provoke. Even Great Jin was unwilling to intervene, as Great Xia was too distant. In the end, under the manipulation of Xia Mang's ancestor, Great Xia sought refuge under the dominion of the Chaos Domain. From then on, Great Xia became a dynasty within the Chaos Domain. The harassment from the Mo Luo Kingdom ceased and shifted towards expanding into the Western Sea. When Jian Wushuang heard this news, a smile played on the corners of his lips. This was probably all planned by those people together with the goat-horned old man's group. The ruler of the chaotic domain, who could dispatch the goat-horned old man to oversee Great Xia, likely had already infiltrated the Neo-Luo nation. The ability to unite with the Mo Luo nation and smoothly incorporate Great Xia into the chaotic domain indicated that the celestial order in the Earth realm might have changed long ago. He had initially thought that behind all this, it was the people from the Kuei organization playing chess. In the end, he discovered it was all orchestrated by individuals from the Qixin Temple and the Elder's Palace. He had underestimated the Qixin Temple, underestimated their influence. This was the Qixin Temple. How could they let someone from the Kuei organization ride on their heads? On the western front of the Mo Luo nation, the Western Sea, originally following the changes to become a personal guard, hoping to get close to the eldest prince, Jian Wushuang never saw him once from beginning to end. Later, upon slight inquiry, he found out that the eldest prince had gone to the Western Front. He also changed his identity and arrived at the Western Sea. This was the border of Tiannan, no longer belonging to Tiannan in the vast sea area. Now, Jian Wushuang, transformed into a Dao Lord on a journey across the sea, sat on a massive treasure ship, sailing alongside tens of thousands of Dao Lords and some emperors. They slaughtered sea monsters, extracting origin sources. This practice was quite popular in this region, and a single trip across the sea could yield tens of thousands of godstones. And that was just for Dao Lords. Tier 3 emperors could gain hundreds of thousands in one voyage. Jian Wushuang shook his head. No wonder many emperors came from elsewhere, while Dao Lords were all from local sections. He traveled far into the Western Sea, already beyond the borders of the Mo Luo Kingdom. Here, there were no nations, just some tribes and sects governing, relatively stable. However, given the expansion speed of the Mo Luo Kingdom, it wouldn't be long before this place would be engulfed in the flames of war. Jian Wushuang arrived on the deck, feeling the sea breeze. His gaze was somewhat vacant. He still had a clone that entered the black hole, continuously shuttling through it. It had been countless years by now. The colorful space kept changing, and he could sense that the distance from his main body was no longer within the scope of a universe. It was truly too distant. Initially, he only intended to take a look inside, but he didn't expect the black hole to carry him so far. The immense energy from the black hole made it impossible for him to control his physical body. Even though his consciousness had reached deep inside, his body was still slowly flying. The two had separated. This black hole was somewhat different from what he had imagined. From the outside, it didn't appear very large. According to his understanding, some mature black holes were as big as entire worlds. The black hole he entered was clearly not mature, but its interior surpassed his cognition. Interesting. Since it's just a clone, I might as well see where the source is. Jian Wushuang's clone continued forward, while the main body floated in the midst of the boundless sea. Western Sea. It is a special place in the Earth realm. Within the Earth vein, only the north, south, and central regions are suitable for survival. Few cultivators venture into the Western Sea, as it serves as the territory of sea monsters. Typically, they only hunt sea monsters on the outskirts and rarely enter the inner Western Sea. Jian Wushuang came here not only to search for the crown prince of the Mo Luo Kingdom, but also to slay sea monsters to refine the origin source for Bai Junwang. Originally planning to sit back and reap the benefits between Great Xia and Mo Luo, he now found himself transformed into a destitute Dao Lord. Indeed, plans couldn't keep up with changes. Initially, the situation was favorable. Regardless of the outcome between the two sides, he would gain something. If he lost, he could simply give up the beast god weapon components and find another opportunity later. At least, he could freely kill and assist Bai Junwang in refining the origin source during the war. Now, things were different. He was massacring unilaterally, unable to escape, let alone conduct blood sacrifices. Of course, winning would be the best outcome. He could not only perform a blood sacrifice but also obtain components for the beast god's weapon. By helping Bai Junwang reach his peak and parting ways, he could also seek refuge with the old man with goat horns, making the entire Great Xia his own. He could utilize the resources of the entire Great Xia to aid his cultivation. Directly stacking the divine body to 50,000 times was not a problem, refining the heavenly demon art to its peak, and then advancing both the extreme Dao and sword Dao, allowing him to quickly reach perfection. That's the advantage of having resources. However, things took a turn for the worse. He gained nothing and attracted trouble. He had no choice but to flee to the Western Sea, relying on slaying sea monsters to obtain origin source for Bai Junwang's blood sacrifice. The swaying ship moved swiftly. To enter the sea, one had to travel by boat, and flying alone required the strength of a peak 4th-rank emperor. Although this was just the outer sea with few powerful demonic beasts, there were still some 4th-rank emperor-level demonic beasts lurking around, posing a great danger. Jian Wushuang's current strength was more than enough to deal with those demonic beasts, but to maintain a low profile and conceal his identity, he chose to take the boat. He had spent a considerable amount of godstones for this. Brother Jian Yi. On the deck, a slender Taoist, seeing Jian Wushuang standing alone, revealed a smile and walked over. Jian Wushuang was currently using the name Jian Yi, and his strength was only at the ordinary Dao Lord level. Seeing the approaching figure, Jian Wushuang felt a bit annoyed, but for the sake of concealing his identity, he endured it and smiled, saying, "Brotherly hi, Jian Yi, how about considering our Iron Sea sect? We are a powerful force on Redwood Island if you join us. I can recommend you internally. We can hunt demonic beasts at sea together, safe and enjoyable." Li Hai strongly recommended, but Jian Wushuang maintained a smiling refusal. Since he boarded the ship, this person had been pestering him with recommendations for the Iron Sea sect, boasting about the powerful emperors in the sect and how formidable it was. It was getting on Jian Wushuang's nerves. Jian Wushuang, despite continuous polite refusals, managed to escape into the cabin's room. Not fearing confrontation with strong individuals, he dreaded getting entangled with such people. Internal recommendations were nothing more than a set of excuses. He had some understanding of Redwood Island. It was populated by various small forces, with hardly any Tier 4 emperors. All of them were expanding and recruiting. Those who could recommend others would receive valuable treasures. For the sake of these treasures, Li Hai spared no effort. Inside the cabin, several Dao Lord experts were drinking and discussing matters related to Redwood Island. Li Hai entered the cabin with Jian Wushuang, initially considering trying his luck. However, upon seeing the people drinking, he abandoned the idea and walked over. Some of these people had just been recruited by him, while a sturdy and muscular man was a leader from the Iron Sea sect. He looked down on recruiting people for such meager treasures because his brother-in-law was an emperor-level powerhouse. "Li Hai, haven't you settled that kid yet?" The robust man sneered, glancing at Jian Wushuang. Li Hai, appearing as an amiable person, spread his hands and said, "No way, it seems to be his first time at sea, not familiar with Redwood Island. He'll understand once he gets there. I'll go talk to him." Hauling his wine bottle, the robust man walked towards the window where Jian Wushuang was. In a domineering manner, he hung his arm around Jian Wushuang's shoulder, reeking of alcohol as he spoke. However, Jian Wushuang promptly pushed him several steps away. The burly man sneered, frustrated. "Humph, ignorant fool. You'll regret going to Redwood Island. When the time comes, you won't even know how you died." He felt that Jian Wushuang was not giving him any face and openly mocked him in front of everyone. Jian Wushuang shook his head, thankful that they were about to arrive. He had no interest in getting into a conflict with these people. If it came to a fight, the strongest person on this ship was only a Tier 3 emperor. Jian Wushuang could easily tear him apart. Looking through the massive crystal window, he gazed at Redwood Island. True to its name, the entire island was bathed in shades of red. Gigantic coral formations stood like small mountains, towering over the surroundings, The majority of the buildings on the island resembled the reddish coral, indicating some modifications made later on. After disembarking, the burly man cast a glance at Jian Wushuang. He could sense Jian Wushuang's extraordinary strength from the earlier push, which explained why he didn't press the matter further. Jian Wushuang, however, didn't pay much attention to this. Upon reaching Redwood Island, he headed straight for the island's shops. There, he could find maps of the surrounding areas of Redwood Island, and he needed one. The nearby waters were teeming with Emperor-level demonic beasts, and even Tier 4 Emperor-level beasts frequently appeared. If a Tao Lord wanted to venture into the inner sea, they would need an emperor to lead the way. Emperors took the meat, and the Tao Lord followed, sipping the soup. After his experience on the ship, he decided it would be better to change his appearance. Sometimes, being too weak was a disadvantage. Entering a narrow alley, he emerged as an emperor emitting a formidable aura. His appearance underwent significant changes, with long hair transformed into shoulder-length locks. Clad in a white robe adorned with dragon patterns and golden edges, he exuded the dignified aura of an emperor. As he walked down the street again, many people avoided him, refraining from approaching for casual conversations. Surveying the surroundings, he arrived at the largest shop on the entire Redwood Island. This was the establishment of a considerable force in the Western Sea, known as the Stellar Pavilion. Though termed a significant force, it was, in reality, quite average. In Tiannan, it might not even qualify as a small force, probably lacking even a few Tier 4 emperors. Upon entering the shop, his emperor's aura was unmistakably revealed. A young woman quickly approached to extend her welcome. "This senior, are you looking to sell or buy treasures?" The young girl, carefully selected for her exceptional appearance, outstanding temperament, and formidable strength, inquired. After all, only those at the level of Tao Lords could be found on this island. Jian Wushuang's expression remained unchanged. He glanced around the grand hall and calmly replied, "Call your shopkeeper here." He had no interest in any of the items displayed above. His main purpose was to purchase sea area maps and gather some information, things unsuitable for public display. Having a little girl introduce him wouldn't yield much useful information. Soon, an elderly man in his 60s walked out from the rear hall. When he looked at Jian Wushuang, a kind smile appeared on his face. Jian Wushuang's revealed strength was that of a Tier 3 emperor, and not just any Tier 3, but a peak-level Tier 3 emperor. Such a presence was rare on Redwood Island. The old man himself was only at the Tier 3 level, at best a top-level force. Seeing Jian Wushuang, he naturally showed respect. "I'll wonder what treasures our friend is looking to acquire." The old man approached and made a welcoming gesture. The two of them moved to the rear hall. Jian Wushuang didn't bother with pleasantries and took the main seat directly. Taking a gentle sip of tea, Jian Wushuang spoke. "The map and information about the surroundings." The map referred to the maritime map of the surrounding area, while the information included details about major powers, certain powerful individuals, and formidable sea creatures within the region. The aged man understood that someone of Jian Wushuang's caliber required uncommon information and maps. Without hesitation, he immediately presented a map that was not circulated locally, showing great sincerity. Jian Wushuang accepted the jade slip handed over to him. It was an exceptionally detailed and expansive map, encompassing regions beyond the higher realms and spanning vast territories. It would take hundreds of years for an emperor to traverse it all. The map also featured numerous markings indicating the locations of formidable sea creatures, satisfying Jian Wushuang's expectations. Taking out a sesame-sized godstone and placing it on the table, Jian Wushuang pushed it slowly toward the old man, saying calmly, "Here's 500,000 godstones." The old man's eyes brightened upon hearing this, but shook his head nonetheless. Jian Wushuang paused, surprised. Wasn't 500,000 sufficient? It wasn't that he couldn't afford to hire some, but he didn't want to arouse suspicion about his identity. Offering 500,000 was already quite generous. An ordinary Tier 3 emperor was valued at just 1,000,000 godstones. "Not enough?" Jian Wushuang inquired, puzzled. The old man smiled and said, "This is your first visit to our stellar pavilion. Consider this map a free gift, my friend. Excuse me. I don't want to owe anyone any debts. Jian Wushuang shook his head and casually took out a mustard seed. He continued, here's another 500,000. Just give me a summary of the information in the nearby waters. Jian Wushuang had no intention of making friends with the other party. Both were emperors, possessing the demeanor of strong individuals. After Jian Wushuang declined, the old man didn't say much either. He handed a jade slip containing recorded information about the surrounding area to Jian Wushuang and accepted a mustard seed in return. Information plus a map, 500,000 will do. Jian Wushuang didn't refuse. Since you don't want it, I'll take it back. After thanking the old man, he left the store directly. The old man watched Jian Wushuang's departing figure and turned upstairs, saying respectfully, Miss, that person seems too indifferent. No matter. A Tier 3 emperor can't help me. A voice came from upstairs, sounding clear but also carrying fatigue and loneliness. Jian Wushuang didn't stay on the island for long. After symbolically purchasing some treasures, he left Redwood Island. There were many islands in the Western Sea, but few had residents. When he arrived, some people remembered Jianyi, but when he left, no one noticed. Glancing at the collected information, Jian Wushuang prepared to head to the swirling sea. With a map to provide clear direction and the information being the key, he was ready to go. The swirling sea, its formation dating back countless epochs, held within its depths swirling currents. Legend spoke of a colossal beast suppressed beneath, causing the tumultuous waves. However, when a Tier 5 emperor ventured deep within, there was no behemoth to be found, only a natural occurrence. Jian Wushuang's destination was precisely this place. The heart of the whirlpool remained uninhabited, ideal for him to hunt sea monsters. The depths concealed numerous demonic beasts, numbering in the billions. Had he performed such a blood sacrifice in Tiannan, even with the cooperation of the Kuei organization, he would eventually be hunted down by vengeful experts. Despite his current strength, he lacked the certainty to swagger freely in Tiannan. Moreover, with the breakthrough in the extreme Tao and the complete suppression of the devouring malevolent thoughts, he refrained from wanton slaughter unless someone blocked his path, such as now. Jian Wushuang halted in mid-air, observing the 7 individuals obstructing his way. Friend, are you heading to the swirling sea? The leader wore a smile, appearing harmless. 7 Tier 3 emperors? Jian Wushuang was surprised. According to the intelligence reports, the swirling sea, even if unique, shouldn't attract a group of emperors. Why was he so unlucky to encounter 7 Tier 3 emperors all at once? Jian Wushuang's lips moved slightly, intending to inquire, but Bai Junwang transmitted a message. These people are suspicious. They seem to be members of the monster race. The 7 emperors grew impatient as they watched Jian Wushuang hesitate to speak. Lost your voice, huh? One of them sneered, extending an arm that spanned 100 feet, delivering a palm strike toward Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's brow flickered as a massive eye manifested in the center of his forehead. When the 7 emperors looked at Jian Wushuang, they felt as if they were facing a colossal eye, losing themselves in an instant. Crash! Without even making a move, these individuals revealed their true forms and heavily plummeted to the sea level. Crack! The bodies of these sea monsters began to shatter, turning into fine powder, leaving only 7 strands of the origin source. Jian Wushuang casually grasped them and stored them in the bracelet on his wrist, a device specifically designed for storing the origin source that he bought on Redwood Island. After these individuals completely perished, ripples once again stirred the sea. That glance just now was the intimidation of the beast god's eye, instantly suppressing and killing these sea monsters. However, unless Bai Junwang mentioned it, Jian Wushuang didn't realize that these individuals were actually sea monsters. They had transformed into the appearance of humans, making it difficult to distinguish. Originally, he came to hunt and kill them, so there was nothing more to be said. When encountering them, he simply exterminated them. In the intelligence he gathered, it was recorded that sea monsters above the emperor level had high intelligence and could easily disguise themselves as humans to deceive human emperors. Jian Wushuang had almost been fooled by these sea monsters just now. If it weren't for his strength as an emperor, there might have been a major battle here today. Sea monsters had individual strength superior to that of humans, especially in the sea. Unfortunately for them, they encountered Jian Wushuang. The swirling sea region. Jian Wushuang hovered in midair, only a foot above the calm sea surface. Although it appeared calm on the surface, hidden currents surged in its depths. With his psychic power spreading for millions of miles, assimilating the seawater with his own psychic power, Jian Wushuang slowly descended. The underwater world was vibrant and colorful, with its own unique charm, but danger accompanied it. A large group of sea monsters roamed within. The weakest among them were at the level of Earth immortals. In the swirling sea, only Yen immortals could survive. Jian Wushuang, like a sharp sword, delved deep into the sea for millions of miles, and the pressure of the sea did not hinder his speed at all. His body technique had long surpassed the constraints of the wind, not confined to the land or sky. Space encompasses the universe. Jian Wushuang remained agile and flexible even underwater. His spatial origin source had reached the level of a black hole. With mastery over black holes, he could freely traverse and even merge with the seawater into his origin source, controlling a domain of the sea. Similar to how those emperors in the original universe controlled their worlds. Of course, those emperors controlled the cumulative origin sources of the world. At the black hole level, even without an origin source, one could control everything in the world. Let the hunt begin. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists, and a tremendous force stirred the seawater. Bai Junwang also revealed a trace of ferocity. After wasting hundreds of years, Jian Wushuang finally began his blood sacrifice again, using the origin source of sea monsters. There was no need for the troublesome process of plundering cultivators anymore. It wasn't much of a difference. Just 100 years here would be enough to gather sufficient origin source. By then, he could open the blood sacrifice and refine the origin source, completing the process. In the God's Tomb on the God Tomb Mountain. Since the inheritor arrived here, Zhenling had condensed a divine body, often lecturing the inheritors. At the peak of Grave God Mountain, Zhenling overlooked the entire God's tomb, holding a trinket in hand, contemplating with a furrowed brow. TSK, still unyielding. It seems the last time didn't hurt you enough. Zhenling muttered to himself, but his gaze saw through the deep space to another world. In that place, magma surged, and if Jian Wushuang saw it, he would undoubtedly recognize the scene. It was the same as what he had witnessed in the trial tower. He could never forget the sight of looking down at the magma from the iron chains, the surging of ancient beasts, and the boundless power. A gigantic dragon had always dwelled there. Sensing the gaze of Zhenling, it shivered and opened its eyes. The two of them faced each other across countless spaces and voids. Zhenling glanced over and extended a claw, causing the giant dragon to stagger. "Ha ha! Coward! Since I can't kill you, I'll infuriate you to death." Zhenling revealed an evil smile, his sinister gaze receding as he began scheming. In the current Earth realm, he always felt an uneasy sensation, suspecting that it was Zhenling of the giant god clan, suppressed deep within, causing trouble. The last time he intervened, that guy didn't learn his lesson. Zhenling's small eyes rolled around, his beard shaking a few times before he thought of a perfect opportunity. Long Yi, who hadn't been out of the Earth realm for long, had just returned to his lair. Upon hearing Zhenling's call, he hadn't even taken a sip of his drink before reluctantly taking another step, leaving the bloodthirst continent once again. Zhenling, however, was nonchalant, finding that he quite liked using Long Yi. Threads of power manipulated a certain part of the Earth realm, steering things in the direction he planned. No one knew about all of this. In the molten purgatory of the giant god tribe, Zhenling moved his body a few times, his gaze furtive. He muttered to himself, "Damn it! Why is that old man eyeing me again? Is it because Bai Junwang's origin source is about to be refined? Last time, Zhenling messed up his plans. Now he had to rely on Bai Junwang. It was difficult enough to obtain someone like Jian Wushuang back then. Trying to get another successor was too challenging. No, Bai Junwang is crucial to the overall situation. I can't be discovered. I need to create some commotion to divert that old man's attention. Meanwhile, Xinling began plotting a major event in the Earth realm. This was also what Xinling wanted to see. This matter originated from Jian Wushuang but had nothing to do with him. In the Earth realm, in the Western Sea on Redwood Island, the business of the Stellar Pavilion located nearby was well known in the area. This was all because the pavilion's owner was a legendary female emperor, whose glory had once shone brightly but had now fallen due to the shortcomings of her inheritance. The headquarters of the Stellar Pavilion had also moved from the seabed to Redwood Island, where many emperors and Tao lords came to mourn. The emperor left behind a daughter, and no one knew who her father was. Now she had also reached Tier 3. Looking at the fleeting clouds, the holy maiden of the Stellar Pavilion, the only daughter of the pavilion's owner, showed no excessive sadness in her eyes, only a sense of closure. Her mother had actually fallen long ago, but as for why they hadn't announced her death, it was due to internal reasons within the Stellar Pavilion. Before Gong Yun's fall, she was a Tier 4 emperor, reigning over the Stellar Pavilion and dominating the nearby seas as a supreme force. Now, with her mother gone, as a Tier 3 emperor, she couldn't hold sway over the situation. Especially with the 3 elders within the Stellar Pavilion, all Tier 4 emperors, one of them being a top Tier 4 emperor. Without the intimidation of her mother, these individuals wouldn't listen to her. If they were to learn that Empress Gongyun had already fallen, the entire Stellar Pavilion might have devoured these people by now. The reason for choosing to announce it now was also a move of necessity. In each epoch, the master of the Stellar Pavilion personally led the stars to offer blessings to the emperors of the Stellar Pavilion in the deep sea. Now, the time was imminent. If they didn't announce it now, it would be even more difficult to step down later. Miaowie, mourn in peace. A greasy middle-aged man with a chubby appearance stepped forward, then continued, "Rest assured, with the old pavilion master gone, my father and I will support you." He had a sinister smile. His strength was average, just a regular Tier 2 emperor, but his father was extraordinary, the strongest Tier 4 emperor within the Stellar Pavilion. The holy maiden of the Stellar Pavilion, Miaowie, had slightly red eyes. Faced with the person she had despised the most before, she could only force a smile and nod. Despite her appearance as a weak woman, ever since her mother, Gong Yun, fell, she began plotting her retreat. The main trading house of the Stellar Pavilion held numerous treasures, equivalent to the entire net worth of a Tier 5 emperor, worth billions of godstones. These treasures were a juicy piece of meat. Not only the internal experts but even external powerhouses coveted a share. She couldn't afford to sit idly by. Among the 3 elders, the only female elder, who had a sisterly bond with her mother, naturally followed her. In secret, she recruited 3 top-level Tier 4 emperors from the southern regions and even colluded with people from the Mo Luo nation. The Western Sea had recently been restless, with frequent appearances of Mo Luo nation's powerhouses. Of course, the powerhouses from Mo Luo nation didn't care much about her possessions. The only thing in the Stellar Pavilion that could catch the eye of Mo Luo's powerhouses was the Holy Maiden. The beauty of the Holy Maiden Gong Miaowie was renowned throughout the West Sea, and her mother was not lacking in looks either, attracting the desires of many Tier 5 emperors. Of course, in secret, nobody knew that she had a romantic affair with that Tier 5 emperor. Anyway, in the West Sea, those Tier 5 independent old monsters wouldn't dare to provoke the master of the Stellar Pavilion. However, times changed, and now those eyeing the Stellar Pavilion were either after Miaowie or the wealth of the Stellar Pavilion. The funeral ceremonies continued for 3 days, attracting many so-called big shots, including over 100 Tier 4 emperors. It certainly broadened the horizons of many. This all took place in the cave mansion on Redwood Island where the Stellar Pavilion was located. In the cave abode of the Stellar Pavilion on Redwood Island, Gong Miaowie was dressed in a long black dress. There were no outsiders around, so there was no need for her to disguise herself. She took off her veil, revealing her misty face. Her face was indeed like her mother's, so beautiful that it made one's hair stand on end. Even in Tiannan, her beauty would be a disaster. Brother Yen, you will help me, right? Gong Miaoi's eyes were slightly red as she looked at the dispirited man in front of her. Yen Chongqing was a famous expert in the Western region, a peak Tier 4 expert. Out of the 3 emperors she had summoned in Tiannan, only 2 had arrived. They had probably seen the battle over the past few days and did not want to get involved in the dispute. Don't worry, Yen Chongqing was moved. With me around, that old man won't dare to do anything to you. He was naturally talking about the Grand Elder of the Stellar Tower. That Grand Elder was very ambitious. Back then, her mother had fallen too quickly. She had fallen before she could make any arrangements, leaving behind this mess. With your words, I can rest assured. Tears streamed down Gong Miaoi's face, making Yen Chongqing's heart ache. Yen Chongqing swallowed his saliva and said with a trembling voice, Miaoi, why don't you come with me? Let's leave the West Sea and go to Tiannan. Gong Miaoi put on her veil again and her heart skipped a beat. Can you let go of sister-in-law? Yen Chongqing was stunned. He shifted his gaze away from Gong Miaoi's face. Her? Thinking of this, he felt somewhat guilty. But the one he truly liked was Gong Miaoi. Ever since he met her, he became infatuated. If it weren't for the powerful force behind his wife, he would have divorced his current wife a long time ago. All right, Brother Yen, don't think too much. The most crucial thing now is that jade slip. It's the most important thing for our stellar pavilion. Gong Miaoi revealed a faint smile. Now there were 3 Tier 4 emperors, plus an elder from the stellar pavilion. Over the years, she had recruited many Tier 3 emperors, many of whom were drawn by her appearance. Deng Bo, how are the candidates? Gong Miaoi saw the newcomer and her eyes flickered. The old man who had been overseeing the Redwood Island Trading Company walked out slowly, nodding without saying a word. Gong Miaoi sighed and her tone became more serious. Delay may lead to changes. Today we set out. The group left the cave and flew towards the sea area, with Gong Miaoi's destination being the swirling sea. There, a cave awaited her to unlock, a significant asset left by her mother. Swirling sea. Jian Wushuang fought tirelessly, and 100 years had passed. He hadn't rested a day in 100 years, constantly hunting sea monsters. Now, in the depths of the swirling sea, half of the sea monsters in the vortex had been sharply reduced. Jian Wushuang had too many methods. Under the amplification of the beast god domain, the sea monsters he killed could be described as countless. There were already tens of thousands of sea monster origin source stored in the bracelet. Not enough. Jian Wushuang felt a bit exhausted. On the sacrificial platform, Bai Junwang sat in meditation, his eyes sharp, and his voice deep. It's enough. The colorful origin source had completely condensed into form. Under Jian Wushuang's refinement of the power of all things, it had become thoroughly stable. Exhaling deeply, Jian Wushuang smiled proudly. You've drained half of my origin source. If it weren't for the strength of my origin source, I'm afraid even giving my life wouldn't be enough for you. His origin source was immensely profound, yet it still took considerable effort to assist Bai Junwang in condensing the current origin source. Haha! Don't worry. What I have, you will have in the future, and what I don't have, you will still obtain. Seeing his strength about to reach its peak again, Bai Junwang was excited. With the successful condensation of the origin source, he no longer needed to rely on Jian Wushuang's sea of origin source. Feeling the origin source that belonged to him within his body, Bai Junwang laughed wildly. This was a complete path of the origin source. Although he had witnessed Jian Wushuang's path of the origin source and felt that his own was just average, having something was still better than having nothing. When he had chosen the path of the divine body back then, his origin source had withered, and before it withered it was already a crippled origin source. Climbing to the top was something he could never dream of. Now, with renewed hope, Jian Wushuang was like his reborn parents. Although all of this also had the help of the divine spirits, they were also stumbling blocks for him. However, bound by the oath, he couldn't break free. But as long as his strength could become stronger, he had no regrets. Now, only the physical body and divine body are left. I wonder what the Lord Shenling has prepared for me. Jian Wushuang casually waved his hand, and the physical body of a middle-aged man appeared before him. Soon, a trace of boundless meaning emanated from his fingertips. The physical body was ordinary, but it was sufficient. As the divine body entered, it instantly increased to a level of 10,000-fold. Bai Junwang was not reserved either. He had been waiting for this day, after the origin source took residence. His entire being radiated a new spiritual countenance. He was the once white-haired emperor, standing proudly in the world. With a slight clench of his fist, a domineering aura was unmistakably revealed. This divine body is too weak. Even with a 10,000-fold divine body, it's only enough for you to unleash the peak power of the Tier 4. If it's too strong, this divine body will collapse. Jian Wushuang reminded from the side, then took out a treasure he hadn't used before. Bai Junwang nodded, grinning wickedly. Haha, just for some fun. I'm still waiting for the body and divine body that Lord Shenling is preparing for me. But being able to feel my own existence is enough. I've been holding back for countless years, and finally, I can let loose a bit. Let's go. We're heading to Redwood Island. Hee. Sure. Jian Wushuang also agreed. The two shared a knowing smile, ready to leave the swirling sea region. Suddenly, ahead of them, there was a tremor, and an ancient bronze giant gate appeared, startling both of them. Jian Wushuang was ecstatic. Unexpectedly, today brought even more joy as they stumbled upon ancient ruins. Haha, let's go inside first and take a look. There's no rush. Bai Junwang understood Jian Wushuang's thoughts. He had no interest in ordinary treasures, but Jian Wushuang, being a Tao Lord, still needed many valuable items. Encountering ruins meant they should explore. Moreover, he hadn't taken action in a long time and felt the urge to warm up. All right, the two immediately rushed toward the bronze gate. Not far away, Gong Miaoui, holding a jade slip, flashed a cold gaze and said, "This way." The group changed direction and entered the depths of the swirling currents. Jian Wushuang gently touched the bronze giant gate with his telekinetic force, attempting to penetrate it, but found it impossible to enter. It seems to be the cave mansion of a Tier 5 emperor. The formation setup is extraordinary, Jian Wushuang muttered, somewhat disappointed. Originally, he thought it might be the cave mansion of a Tier 6 emperor. The cave mansion of a Tier 5 emperor wasn't of great value. In the ruins, the most important thing wasn't treasures. He didn't lack supreme treasures, and the beast god weapon was enough for him for a long time. The supreme eternal treasure wasn't needed at the moment. The general inheritance is even more worthless. He possesses a complete heavenly demon secret technique, and his divine body is not lacking in secret techniques. The origin source is useful for harnessing the power of all things, and it also requires the augmentation of origin source secret techniques. He can even create origin source secret techniques now. His spatial origin source is almost at the level of a black hole. Although his clone that entered the black hole has been constantly being sucked in, it has been continuously comprehending the mysteries of the black hole, conveying its profound secrets to him at every moment. Jian Wushuang really doesn't care about the Tier 5 Emperor's mansion. It's only now, with it right in front of him, that he bothers to take a look. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bothered. Bai Junwang stepped forward, and as soon as his consciousness moved, he sensed a presence approaching. In the underwater environment, where the monster aura is dense, it's challenging to detect the aura of a powerful being. Jian Wushuang didn't sense it at all, but fortunately, Bai Junwang is very sensitive to auras, and he instantly perceived someone approaching. Sure enough, in the next moment, a group of black-robed and masked individuals appeared before them. Elle didn't expect there to be someone here. The cold voice came from the lead woman, who turned out to be Gong Miaoui. It was a group of 9 people. 3 Tier 4 emperors, each a top-notch powerhouse. The remaining 6 all at the pinnacle of the Tier 3. However, Jian Wushuang's side didn't show weakness either. Bai Junwang's aura stabilized, also at the top of Tier 4. Of course, if he were to unleash his full strength, his physical body could withstand a peak Tier 4. Jian Wushuang also revealed the aura of a peak tier 3. For a moment, both sides were in a standoff. Two fellow Taoists. This place was opened by me. Before the other could finish speaking, Bai Junwang took a step forward, directly launching a deliberate punch. A massive vacuum bubble formed in the sea within thousands of miles, followed by an explosion. Boom! No words were exchanged. They went straight into action. Jian Wushuang hadn't expected Bai Junwang to recover his origin source just like that. But now that it had started, he couldn't just stand idly by. Stop! Just as Jian Wushuang was about to take action, Gong Miaoyi quickly shouted to halt them. Gong Miaoyi produced a jade slip and said coldly, "El did indeed open this cave. Without the jade slip, you couldn't enter." This stroke of bad luck had her opening the cave and immediately facing a formidable opponent. Bai Junwang's just erupted power was equivalent to a peak tier 4. Their group might not be a match. "Miss, I've encountered that tier 3 emperor before." An old man with white hair stepped forward, looking at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang also recognized the identity of the other party and gestured for Bai Junwang to stop. Seeing this, the old man was momentarily surprised, and the other emperors also realized that Jian Wushuang was the one in charge, while Bai Junwang seemed more like a bodyguard. Perhaps Jian Wushuang's aura resembled that of someone in a higher position or a scion of a prominent family. With this speculation, they dared not act recklessly. A tier 4 peak emperor acting as a bodyguard implied that Jian Wushuang had substantial backing, at least the direct heir of a major family. "Fellow Taoist, it's been 100 years, but old man hopes you still recognize him." The old man's tone was extremely gentle. However, Gong Miaoyi's heart sank. This cave was crucial to her, and with outsiders already present and now encountering someone who seemed like a scion of a major family, the situation was becoming increasingly difficult. Jian Wushuang raised his figure, locking eyes with the others, and said calmly, "My memory isn't that bad. Let's talk about the cave mansion below." He wasn't particularly curious about his own cave mansion, but the presence of two tier 4 emperors with the aura of Luo cultivators intrigued him. "Fellow Taoist, I am the daughter of the head of the Stellar Pavilion. I came this time to explore the opportunity left by my mother, which is that cave mansion." Gong Miaoyi stepped forward, removed her wide-brimmed hat, revealing her flowing long hair, and looked at Jian Wushuang with captivating eyes. Jian Wushuang, with his keen eyes, saw through the veil, but beauty had long lost its effect on him. He only nodded slightly and said, "Oh, I see. That's a coincidence." Gong Miaoyi's face lit up, thinking that her self-introduction had an effect. What she didn't expect was the sharpness in Jian Wushuang's next words. "Coincidentally, I am here to open the ancestral cave mansion as well. Since we've run into an acquaintance today, how about we explore it together?" Jian Wushuang spoke casually, making it clear that the cave mansion had nothing to do with him, just toying with them. Bai Junwang showed a fierce expression, sneering, "You say it's yours, so it's yours? I could say this little girl has something going on with me. Ha ha." A reckless arrogance. On Gong Miaoyi's side, she felt helpless. She couldn't fight them now, and if she didn't, she might face them again after opening the cave mansion. Fortunately, Gong Miaoyi was prepared. She took a deep breath, forced composure, and secretly communicated with the Luo cultivators. "Senior, I agree to your conditions. I'm willing to offer half of the treasures from the Stellar Pavilion to His Royal Highness, and also my freedom for the next 10,000 years. Her voice trembled as she uttered these words. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes, sensing something suspicious. Clearly, the other party had some hidden cards. However, with Gong Miaoyi's self-introduction, the Stellar Pavilion didn't seem like a major power, lacking even a Tier 5 emperor. He wasn't concerned. What concerned him more were the Luo cultivators. It seemed they had already started communicating through voice transmission after hearing Gong Miaoyi's self-disclosure. As fourth prince, Gong Miaoyi has agreed. After a brief stalemate, with the reinforcement of Gong Miaoyi, Jian Wushuang finally breathed a sigh of relief. Beneath the swirling sea, a bronze door appeared remarkably ancient. Jian Wushuang and Bai Junwang stood on the side, patiently awaiting the opening of the grand gate. With Gong Miaoi offering substantial support, Jian Wushuang wasn't surprised. Judging from the expressions of those around him, he could speculate that it wouldn't be long before formidable individuals from the Mo Luo nation arrived. The only uncertainty was the size of the catch. If the Prince Luo Sha came, it would be an extraordinary stroke of luck. A perfect double-edged opportunity. While Jian Wushuang didn't particularly care about the treasures behind the bronze door, if they were easily obtainable, he wouldn't refuse them either. There were many places he would need treasures in the future. He hadn't reached a stage where he could disregard resources. Even after reaching the Tao merge, he would still have a demand for treasures, especially potent eternal artifacts or unique items like those within the forest of eternal secrets. Snap! Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow as Gong Miaoi opened the bronze door, and a majestic aura spread from within. The power within it was at a Tier 5 level. Observing from outside, the interior seemed ancient and corroded. The existence of this cave was evidently ancient. Even Bai Junwang sensed a familiar atmosphere, reminiscent of their era. There shouldn't be any danger inside. It's the aura that's intriguing. Bai Junwang smiled faintly, showing little interest in the treasures. After the recovery of his origin source, Bai Junwang communicated with Xinling. He only awaited the recovery of his physical and divine bodies. At that time, he would truly be restored to his peak. With his complete transcendent peak strength, combined with his former peak divine body, his combat power would rival superpowers like Wuxia and Bai Yi. The treasures in the 4 great secret realms no longer held any attraction for him. Only the contents of the god's tomb were somewhat special, and he couldn't exaggerate its significance. Now, he found himself quite interested in a young girl named Gong Miaoi. Perhaps the restoration of the desolate origin source had revitalized him, bringing forth a youthful restlessness within. Jian Wushuang stood on the side without rushing in. Instead, he patted Bai Junwang's shoulder and transmitted a message. Don't be careless. The danger is not inside but outside. Bai Junwang, still somewhat excited, clearly wasn't as calm as Jian Wushuang. He had yet to realize the connection between Gong Miaoi and the people from the Mo Luo kingdom. The cave entrance opened. Gong Miaoi, rarely humble, turned around and looked at Jian Wushuang, speaking softly. May I ask, sir, would you like to enter first? It was her first time here, or else she wouldn't be unaware of the location. Jian Wushuang had confidence in entering first. Even if it meant attracting the powerful from the Mo Luo kingdom, she didn't seem to care much. Her mother had left her a voice transmission jade slip detailing all the secrets of this place. What was hers, and no one could take it away. Knowing there was no danger, Jian Wushuang naturally didn't hesitate. With a cold snort, he, along with Bai Junwang, entered the cave directly. As they passed by Gong Miaoi, the unhidden greed in Bai Junwang's eyes surprised everyone. Being at the peak of the Tier 4, how could he behave as if he had never seen a woman before? The 2 powerful individuals from the Mo Luo kingdom were indifferent, as eccentric characters were quite common in the demonic path, and they were not surprised. Yan Chongqing, on the other hand, was somewhat annoyed, eyes burning with fire, on the verge of taking direct action, cursing the nuisances under his breath. On the side, Gong Miaoi had a hint of relief in her eyes. Fortunately, she had kept a trump card, agreeing to the conditions set by the 4th prince of the Mo Luo kingdom. She didn't want to fall into the hands of those old monsters. She feared a lifetime of torment, living in purgatory. After taking a deep breath, she led her people into the cave. After everyone entered, the bronze gate closed again, disappearing beneath the depths of the swirling sea. However, when Gong Miaoi entered the cave, she left a trace of mental energy in the outside world, a coordinate. Based on this coordinate, the 4th prince of the Mo Luo kingdom could easily find her. When Jian Wushuang came out, he would have to face the Mo Luo kingdom's formidable individuals blocking the entrance. In the Western Sea, several seas away from the Redwood Island, in the Turtle Spirit Island, here stood a massive island comparable to a planet. on this island was one of the top forces in the Western Sea. It couldn't exactly be called a force because the owner of this place had no disciples, and the number of powerful individuals sitting here was pitifully few. Apart from disciples, there were only some servants. Yet, with just these people, they held control over one of the gigantic islands in the Western Sea, and no one dared to provoke them. The reason for all this was the owner of this place, whose strength was almost heaven-defying. He was a renowned Tier 6 peak emperor in the Western Sea. One person constituted an entire force, and no one dared to offend. This Tier 6 emperor was accompanied by 6 disciples, each a formidable emperor in their own right. The weakest among them was a peak Tier 4 emperor, while the strongest reached the peak of the Tier 5. 2 of these disciples hailed from the same family, the royal family of the Luo kingdom. 4th Prince. The deployment of powerful forces within the army must be approved by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince. A Tier 5 emperor clad in exquisite armor blocked the path of the 4th Prince. The 4th Prince, Luo Chuan, had grown up on Redwood Island under the guidance of his master. Now, at the peak of Tier 4, his combat prowess wasn't far behind that of his elder brother. Luo Chuan snorted coldly and bellowed, "This is the military might of Neo-Luo, not a private army of that woman Luo Sha." The Luo kingdom had invaded the Western Sea, and their main base was on Redwood Island. With Great Xia no longer a potential adversary, Luo expanded its territory twofold and doubled the size of its army. A fifth of Luo's elite forces were under the command of Prince Luo Sha. The remaining forces were split among the royal family, with the rest held by the elderly patriarch. Luo had few Tier 5 emperors among its ranks, so the number of armies directly controlled was limited. Luo Sha could control 1/5 of the elite forces because he had grown up accompanying the army from a young age. Step by step, he had climbed to this position. In the invasion of the Western Sea, he had been promoted to commander, leading forces without having to bow to the whims of the elderly patriarch. Now, in seclusion on Redwood Island, Luo Sha prepared to break through to Tier 5. Once successful, his status would skyrocket once again. Although Luo did not formally establish a crown prince, those with discerning eyes could see that, in terms of strength, ability, and succession, Prince Luo Sha was the one. If he achieved another breakthrough, the issue wouldn't be about establishing a crown prince, but about deposing his father and taking the throne himself. The current emperor of Luo had average strength and mediocre talent. Otherwise, the conquest of such vast territories wouldn't have left the kingdom in such poverty. Luo Sha, on the other hand, carried significant responsibilities. Having battled and studied throughout his life, he ruled his assigned territories with impeccable order and governance. In the Luo kingdom, his prestige ranked among the top 3. The elite army of the direct line naturally followed the orders of the crown prince. The 4th prince, an illegitimate child, bowed to the Turtle Spirit Island, making his status somewhat special. Otherwise, they would have ignored him. The 4th prince was furious, but he had nowhere to vent. Among the army, there were several Tier 5 emperors, and if he dared to cause trouble, he would probably suffer a lot. However, on the side of Gong Miaoi, he had already agreed to go with his troops. The opponent had a Tier 4 peak emperor, equivalent in strength to him. Going alone was too risky, so he thought of selecting a few Tier 4 peak emperors from the army. However, he couldn't get them to move. Back in his own residence, he scanned the area. Among his subordinates, there were only a few Tier 4 top-level emperors, and not a single peak-level emperor. These people had come to seek refuge with him because they couldn't survive in Luo Nation, and he had to support them. While he was feeling anxious, one of his subordinates presented a plan. After listening, Luo Chuan showed a pleased expression and left Turtle Spirit Island with a few followers. At the bottom of the swirling sea, inside a bronze gate, Jian Wushuang and the others only realized upon entering that this was not a blessed land. It was a simple and ancient hall. The interior of the hall was old and heavy, and several divine guardian had long lost consciousness. Even though people had entered, there was no response at all. After scanning the surroundings, Jian Wushuang's curiosity vanished completely. He then turned to look at Gong Miaoi. "You're playing me." No wonder he was asked to enter first. There was nothing here. These people probably had other motives for coming here. Gong Miaoi slightly bowed and said softly, "Young master, please don't be angry. Since we are exploring together, any treasures I obtain will be shared equally with you." Young master. The words sounded fine at first, but upon closer inspection, they were riddled with loopholes. Only a fool would believe it. Without even laying eyes on the treasures, even if Gong Miaoi obtained numerous treasures, Jian Wushuang wouldn't know about them. When the time comes, just giving him a few items to dismiss him would leave him with no grounds for complaint. He couldn't possibly inspect other people's belongings. Even if he did, he wouldn't be able to determine whether those treasures were acquired in this place. Although the goal this time wasn't in this location but rather for fishing, they still had to act the part. With a slight movement, Jian Wushuang retreated behind Bai Junwang. Bai Junwang instantly understood the implication, revealed a trace of a sinister smile, and approached, saying, "Little girl, I will play with you." Following Gong Miaoi, the two emperors of the Mo Luo kingdom stepped forward directly, and Yen Chongqing, who couldn't tolerate it any longer, released his aura to the extreme, almost attacking directly. "Elder, every word I say is true. Now that we are here, it is not appropriate for conflicts to arise. I promise you that, in the event of any treasures obtained, half will be shared with the elder." Gong Miaoi spoke calmly and confidently. She didn't believe that the person in front of her would act so recklessly and insist on fighting. Bai Junwang flexed his wrist, raised his eyebrows slightly, and said lightly, "I think it's better to clean up these small fries first." As soon as he finished speaking, an extremely powerful origin source burst forth, a force that perpetually suppressed everything. Unfortunately, the physical and divine bodies were too weak, only able to exert a fraction of their combat power. Even so, this meager strength left the three top-level Tier 4 emperors breathless. Initially, they thought that 3 top-tier emperors would be enough to restrain Bai Junwang, but unexpectedly, just the suppression in aura immobilized them completely. A loud roar. Bai Junwang's sleeve extended for 100 feet, instantly enveloping several Tier 4 emperors. Under immense pressure, their physical bodies and divine essences were crushed in an instant, leaving only origin sources on the verge of collapse. The emperors from the Mo Luo nation completely panicked, unsure of what to do in that moment, and it was too late to beg for mercy. Within Bai Junwang's origin source, myriad elements were mixed, representing countless Tao paths. While he couldn't perfectly devour and transform them into his own origin source like Jian Wushuang, it had the effect of strengthening his own aura. Now, when he tried to integrate them into his body, he found that those origin sources began to distort and eventually turned into a stream of water, flowing towards Jian Wushuang. "You are shameless." Jian Wushuang just smiled faintly, saying casually, "I gave you too much credit. Your origin source is already perfect. These things are of no use to you." This statement was like that of an extraordinary being born with a 10,000-fold divine body, snatching a large piece of meat from a newborn cultivator and earnestly saying, "Why waste meat on a child?" However, these were trivial matters that Bai Junwang didn't care about. Snap! Jian Wushuang pinched the origin source of Yen Chongqing in his hand, paying no attention to his struggles. The remaining Tier 3 emperors were directly killed by Bai Junwang, their origin sources annihilated together. Jian Wushuang couldn't be bothered to devour them. Now only Gong Miaoi remained standing still. "Now, can we have a proper conversation? If I put it in a nicer way, I might consider letting go of your little lover," Jian Wushuang said leisurely, showing no signs of urgency. He directly sat on the throne in the hall, looking down on everything. Gong Miaoi's eyes flickered as she contemplated the current situation. She never expected Bai Junwang's strength to be so formidable that he effortlessly killed all her people in an instant. Now only Yen Chongqing was left hanging on by a thread. She could see that Jian Wushuang's thoughts were meticulous. The slight changes in Yen Chongqing's aura were enough for him to deduce that their relationship was unusual. Moreover, choosing this moment to act indicated that he probably wasn't interested in the treasures here. If it were for the treasures, Why not wait until she obtained them before making a move? Gong Miaoi concluded that the plan had been exposed, and the opponent's ambitions were significant. Go ahead then. Gong Miaoi's eyes gradually turned cold, and she pulled down her veil, revealing her true face. Even her breath began to change. The originally delicate appearance now had a somewhat explosive quality. Jian Wushuang was somewhat surprised, teasing, "If you want me to kill, just let me do it. Isn't that losing face?" As his words fell, he released the origin source in his hand. The origin source instantly transformed into a humanoid phantom, exactly like Yen Chongqing. He looked at Gong Miaoi with a hint of melancholy. His discontent was not about Gong Miaoi's ruthlessness, but rather his own weakness. Why wasn't he a Tier 5 emperor? If he were, there wouldn't be so many complications. Miaoi! Yen Changqing's eyes were full of infatuation. Then, when he turned to look at Jian Wushuang, anger filled his gaze. He shouted, "I'll fight you!" Buzz! The phantom erupted with beams of light, and cracks in the sky above were about to burst. Jian Wushuang grasped the void, and instead of exploding as intended, the cracks on the phantom began to mend. With a slight movement from Jian Wushuang, not only were all the cracks repaired, but Yen Changqing's aura also became much stronger. He was forcibly infusing the power of all things into the opponent. You complained about not having enough strength, right? Well, I'm giving it to you now.